Okay. Ms. Mokrisi, how are you doing this morning?
I'm great, thank you.
We have a large number of people signed up for public comment. We will continue with public comment as usual, 3 minutes per testimony, and I'll make a little discussion of that just before we get into that. So we'll start with the adjustments to the agenda. Do we have any adjustments to the agenda?
We don't have any from staff. I understand there might be a commissioner adjustment.
Thank you. Then before I get to adjustments to the agenda, Commissioner Buck, I'm going to turn it over to you. I believe there are some people here we'd like to recognize very quickly.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. And I know this is a little unusual in this section of our agenda, but I did want to acknowledge that we have folks from the McKenzie area in the room with us, many victims of the Holiday Farm fire and currently smoked in another fire called the Lookout Fire. I want to thank you for coming all this way.
And thank you, Commissioner Buck.
Chair Barr,
Yes, Ms. Jones.
I lost audio for a second because I was trying to jump in and tell you I had not started the meeting yet. You gabbled in before I got the thing. So we have actually not started this meeting yet. So if I can have a 30-second warning, we'll get it started so people online can come in as well.
Could you all leave and come back, please?
You can just
Very good. Then let's give it 30 seconds, and I'm going to use the top of my pen, which is a little bit louder. So in 30 seconds, we will actually begin this meeting in a regular order. Thank you.
I believe there's a gavel in the drawer back there as well.
Okay.
Is it a drawer?
I'm fine.
I have an old telephone you could use.
All right. Good morning and welcome to the August 22nd regular board meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. Morning, Ms. Mokrisi. We have relatively clear air this morning. My phone says we have 23 in Eugene, which doesn't make it any nicer for the people on the other end of the wind that's blowing the smoke out of Eugene today. I'll begin with adjustments to the agenda and start with you, Commissioner Buck. A little bit of a deviation, but Commissioner Buck.
I'm happy to repeat. I want to welcome folks from up the McKenzie region to our meeting today. I know this is generally a little out of order, but I want to recognize them for coming all this way, knowing that they are, many are Holiday Farm fire survivors, as well as in the middle of a large fire upriver right now called the Lookout Fire. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Commissioner Buck. Ms. Mokrisi, any adjustments to the agenda?
No.
Then I have one. With the board's indulgence, I'd like to, from the consent calendar, I'd like to pull item E2. This is item 5E2, which is order 2308-2207. Excuse me, E1. It's, E1, which is 2308-2206, in the matter of approving one public works amendment and delegating authority to the county administrator to execute the approved contract for emerging acquisitions, LLC DBA bulk handling systems. Mr. Mokrisi, I've passed that along to our Public Works Director, and I believe that that's going to be wrapped into a presentation that's already existent on the agenda subsequent to the consent calendar. Without dissent, that item has been pulled from the consent calendar. Miracles. Then we'll move down to emergency business. Mr. Mokrisi, any emergency business?
No.
Any from the board? I'm seeing none. Then we'll move along to the public comments section of our Board of Commissioners meeting. We allow 3 minutes in the mic each morning for people in Harris Hall and for people online. Keep an eye on the screen. There'll be a clock on the screen which will count down from the 3 minutes. We have a large number of people here for testimony today, unusual for the Board of County Commissioners, and we have a large number online. Typically, we give 3 minutes, and we will allow up to 3 minutes. If you can, in order to allow subsequent speakers time to express their opinions before we run out of time, then please shorten your presentation. But you're able to make as much as 30 seconds. Keep an eye on that clock, and we will be cutting it off at 30 seconds. I'll call your name in the order that you're signed up, and I'll ask for the person who is second in line to move forward to the mic while the person who is speaking. So first we have John Umenhofer, who will be followed by Heidi Ringus. Mr. Umenhofer, can you step to the mic, identify yourself, and begin your 3 minutes?
Okay, my name is John Umenhofer.
the neighborhood residents of Grand Vista were here a few weeks ago and talked to you about this illegal structure. We have some new developments we want to ask for your involvement. We're requesting the Lane County Commissioners ask the Division Director to forward the case regarding the extremes permit applications to them. We would request the Commissioners make the appropriate decision regarding the new permit applications in this case. The ramifications of the decision in this case to the county residents are enormous. On 8/18/23, I spoke to Public Works Director Dan Hurley after sending him the laws regarding this case. He told me that the county has no way to make the extremes take down the illegal structure in the SFHA after it has been built. I know that to be false. At this point, we have absolutely no faith in the Public Works and Planning Division's ability to make decisions protecting the public regarding legal floodplain and SFHA management. Here are 4 reasons why we would like the director to forward the decision to the commissioners. Number 1, the county is now at risk of losing their ability to be covered by the federal floodplain insurance program. The decisions made in this case clearly show they are not protecting the community from future flooding. Refer to the 15-page final ruling by hearings official Ann C. Davies for further detail on that. 2, the precedent they are establishing is an absolute disaster for Lane County. Based on Dan Hurley's statement to me, you can build anything you want along the McKenzie River basin in a special flood hazard area as long as you build it without permits. Once it's built, there's nothing that Lane County can do to make you remove an illegal structure or fill. That opens the floodgates. It is an illegal development that negatively affects the local environment, climate change, watershed, water courses, and the scenery of the beautiful McKenzie River Basin. And 4, you are required to obtain a floodplain fill permit before dumping the fill in an SFHA. Even if the county allows them to apply for one after the fact, the county still has to follow the floodplain development laws listed below, and the proposed fill that's already dumped there cannot increase flood risk. The county administrator's first board-approved listed priority on their website is a safe, healthy county. If you look at the laws in this case, they are very clearly, I've stated them, and I would encourage you to read them. I've sent it all to you, and I'm going to also leave this so it can be entered into the record. It'll state law after law after law that's been violated and has not been followed. For the safety of our community, for some reason, the county has failed us, and they just don't seem to be concerned at all about flood risk and about life and property regarding this. This was massive amounts of fills and water courses changed that should have been addressed 2 years ago when they built it intentionally, knowing it was illegal, without permits. So at this point, we're hoping that your involvement can assist us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Umenhofer, and your written testimony is always welcome. Thank you.
Do I leave it here?
Yes, perfect. Heidi Ringus will be followed by John Proffitt.
Interestingly enough, my name is Heidi Ringus, and interestingly enough, we have the exact opposite problem. They are trying to come in after 17 years of building and permitting the building under the single residential family dwelling, 75% in, and they're going to come in and say, nope, everything's wrong. Everybody before us was completely incompetent, and you just have to tear it all down and start over. I mean, seriously, they have literally put a stop work order on the door, checked every single box. I mean, they're out of control. They tell them they can't have it torn down. They tell us, you're almost done. Tear it all down. You know, I mean, it's ridiculous. They are so, okay. And I am still floored that you are trusting the people that you are trusting to give you information when I have given you the documents that prove that everything that was said in the July 11th meeting by Mr. Mokrohiski and Mr. Miller was a lie. They kept telling you this whole thing was about a commercial permit. No, it was about a sprinkler system. And on page 11 of my rebuttal, he actually slipped and told the truth at the very top of the page. So I don't know where you got your information, sir, but it was completely false. So we have documents of their, so before they came and put the thing on the door, we had gone to Daniel Hurley with our case. He did nothing but dig his heels in to cover everybody below him, the incompetence of everybody below him. And then they actually cited a document that is not in public record that has crucial information as to what kind of sprinkler system we were supposed to put in by the state that they've had for a decade that is not on file, and stuck it right next to their request for this information that they've had from the sprinkler system company. And I literally am floored that they used their incompetence to cite a justification for trying to evict a man and his family from his house after 75% of his house has been built. Now they want him to just tear it all down and get a commercial permit. They're out of control. And if you do not step in, yeah, people are being damaged. Thousands of dollars are being wasted. Time, energy, effort. And you need to step in and do something because they are literally out of control. And you backing them up sent me over the edge. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ringus. Next is John Prophet, who will be followed by Tom Williams.
Hi, I'm John Prophet. You guys know me. I have one thing before I start into this. I would like FAR to schedule a special meeting 24 hours from now and reinsert the county commissioners into the building decisions of Lane County. That gives you your 24-hour call a special meeting. Okay. What I have, this is all down to just one point, really. 2011, my house plans, 4 stories, went to the state. They determined it was residential. They had Lane County Building Department issue the electrical permit residential, not commercial. And they said you can wire it in Romex. If I got a commercial permit now, if I didn't tear the whole house down, I'd have to tear out all the walls and put conduit in, and then they'd decide that my glue lambs, I probably needed steel instead. It destroys my house, totally. And the as-built. Remember, the as-built is the remedy for things not done properly. They have it from 2016. They have it. There's my house, past that, and what are they doing with it? Oh, must be in the garbage can somewhere. Here's a compliance letter from 22. It says put a sprinkler system in. I did. I had to go out of state to hire somebody to do it. Here's my original permit. Here is my permit reinstated in July of 22 per that CA that came, CA 16, that came in May. There is my house that you're taxing, obviously 4 stories. It says it has a garage, 2 floors, and an attic that's usable space, okay? And here's the notice that they marked every damn thing on and came out. It took 3 of them. The yearly salary of those 3 people standing there was $240,000. What a waste. Mr. Webster came out and hung it personally. Tell me that isn't another retaliation. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prophet. Tom Williams will be followed by J.B. Carney.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Tom Williams. I'll keep it short. My message is simple. It's the same message that I conveyed in a letter to the board about a month ago, and that is that the board ought to complete the master plan for the Lane Event Center before making a decision about the stadium. One of the responses I got was essentially, the stadium takes up only 9.5 acres. The property is 55 acres. Not such a big deal. Maybe we'll go ahead and build the stadium and then figure out what to do with the rest of the property. The problem with that is that the impact of the stadium goes far beyond 9.5 acres. Already we've discovered that it's going to require the demolition of a livestock building, rebuilding it somewhere. One of the current important users of the Lane Event Center, the logging conference, is going to need to look elsewhere for their event. And most importantly, it's going to limit the future possibilities for this property. So it could be that the stadium is perfectly in line with the community's, goals and vision for this property, and the community doesn't want to consider anything else. It doesn't want to consider the hotel, conference center, some of the other possibilities that were included in the updated master plan that came out a week ago. We don't know. As far as I know, there hasn't ever been a community conversation about this. So we're doing the master plan will be an opportunity to involve the community in what is the larger vision for this property. That's really the most important conversation we should be having right now. So I think that's about it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. J.B. Carney will be followed by Dana Turell.
Good morning, Chair Farr, Commissioners. My name is J.B. Carney, and I'm the Senior Director of Sport for Travel Lane County. I know our team will be here at the end of September to present their annual report, so this morning I just wanted to take my time to share some exciting community announcements. Over the last couple of weeks, our organization, in partnership with other stakeholders, have been able to secure a number of major events for the future of this community. We've been able to work with USA BMX to secure their 2024 Lumberjack National Championships, with US Rowing to secure their Northwest Masters Regional Championship. Tracktown USA just announced the bid and hosting of the World Athletics Under 20 Championships for 2026. And fingers crossed, we're hoping to get the announcement that we will be the host for the 2024 U.S. Olympic Team Trials for track and field. This would be the unprecedented 5th consecutive time, but we won't know for sure until September. All of this is coming off what has been an extraordinary year for Lane County from a sports tourism standpoint. In the last few months alone, we've had the opportunity to host several regional and national championship events. These events took place throughout the county. In total, they represented an estimated $27.2 million in economic impact. Of this total, roughly 45%, or $12.25 million, were spent directly in our restaurants and retail spaces. These are businesses owned by our own residents throughout Lane County. And this is just the tip of the iceberg for sports tourism in Lane County. So again, this morning, I just wanted to share some exciting updates and take a moment to say thank you for your continued support of the work we do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Carney. Dana Turell will be followed by Melanie Stanley.
Hello, Commissioners. Good to be here. Thanks for the time to speak to you today, and truly thank you for the job that you do. I just want you to know it's not lost on me how hard you work for our community, and it's a difficult job, and I appreciate what you put in. My name is Dana Turell. I am a small business owner in downtown Eugene, and today I'm here representing a group called Taxpayers for Transparency. If you're interested to learn more about our work, there is a website, taxpayersfortransparency.com. We are a newly formed advocacy group with an actively growing list that is looking for transparency and due diligence in public investments. I'm here today to give you one more thank you. I mean, how many times do you get a thank you in the public comments? So that's 3 maybe in a row. For looking back at the master plan process for the Lane Event Center. I appreciate that you've taken the time and initiative to go back to where you were in April and the steps that were led up to that, and to see what the recommendations are from the report that the consultants put forward at that time. You invested in that time and that report, and I'm glad to see you revisit it today. We are supportive of finishing and completing the master plan of the Lane Event Center before any decisions are made on what to build there or investments to take on that public land with public money. I'm going to tell you, none of us want to see the M's leave this community. I personally do not want to see that. However, what we know of the M Stadium up to this point is that it would take 20% of that land, that public land at the Lane Event Center, As far as I understand, the Lane Event Center is an enterprise fund, meaning that they are responsible for paying their own way, so to speak, through fees and transient lodging tax. As far as the information that I've seen to the public, I don't see enough financial information to determine a return on investment or to know how revenue would be generated or passed through. So I don't see how it can contribute to that enterprise fund. And without doing or completing the master plan process, I don't know how you can do your hard job of determining what is the best use of that public land with public funds. So I think the M's have been put in a terrible position. They are being rushed. They are under a crunch for an impossible timeline and an impossible financial situation. It's not their fault, but it's not yours either. And it's not your responsibility or ours in the public to pay $100 million to build a facility on our public land that will take 20% of that Lane Event Center. So we encourage you to take the time needed to do the full master plan. And I'm done. Thank you.
I'll turn that off, sorry. Thank you, Ms. Terrell. Next is Melanie Stanley, who will be followed by Steve Severin.
Hello, Commissioners. Hi, Melanie Stanley. We've all met. My main reason for being here today partly is we know we've all got the lookout fire, but my main reason is Blue River is still in a stranglehold for redevelopment. I currently can't get my building put up because of a parking issue still. The special setbacks was an amazing thing, but we need the TGM process to go a lot faster than it is, or at least something to say, hey, this is what's coming, so that my architect and God love her, Becky Taylor, can get something on the books so that my insurance knows that I'm planning on rebuilding, so that the OLCC for my liquor store knows that I'm planning on rebuilding, all of those things, because I'm facing hard deadlines. All of us are facing hard deadlines, and all of Blue River is stuck in wastewater, water, TGM, all of those things, and we just keep getting told 6 more months, 1 more year, 6 more months, 1 more year. We have until 2025. That's a year and a half from now. So we can't wait anymore. So whatever it is that you guys can do as the powers that be to push any of those processes forward any faster, emergency protocol, I don't know what those are, but we need to do something, because Blue River is going to be a ghost town and nobody's going to be able to rebuild. So that's kind of where I'm at, and I'm asking for whatever it is that you guys can do. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stanley. Steve Severin will be followed by Tim Hooton.
Good morning. My name's Steve Severin. I'm a project manager for Dale Turnley Construction. We're doing this stuff in Blue River, and it's 3 years, September 4th, whatever I think the date is, and we still don't have a decision on it. And all those property owners in there, we're doing the clinic right now, and Melanie and these other owners are stuck, and there's funding and stuff that's going away, and they're not making a decision. You need to get Becky Taylor and Amber Bell together and decide if you're going to do a waiver for those parking spaces. That was the whole purpose of doing this other stuff. And it's just dragging on and on and on, and there's really no other place to go but here. And we'd really like to see that done so we can continue on with our community. And I'm going to be 65 or 69 here pretty soon. I want to retire by the time I'm 72. So I want to finish these projects and we can get on with it. I don't think I want to work till I'm 75. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stanley. Tim Hooton will be followed by Sandy Mann.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I've been a resident of the Rainbow area for the last 15 years. 2 areas of concern that I have that have been raised again with another natural disaster in our area. The first one is the lack of proper cell coverage in our area. As you can imagine, there's a lot of people that rely dramatically on that particular service. The cell coverage, especially post-fire, has been extremely bad. And when we're expected to rely on emergency alerts, I myself have been in a level 1 fire alert here for several weeks now. Within a half a mile of me is a level 3 emergency go now. And with the poor cell coverage, it's extremely important that something is done about the improvement of cell coverage. And this has been going on now for quite some time, and it's worse post-fire. The second thing is the concern about the emphasis on the FireWise program. I know that, if I understand it correctly, it's federal money that's funneled, I believe, through the county for the FireWise program. I spent over $10,000 of my own money and 3 months of hard work working my own property, and there's still more that I would like to do. But what appears to be the lack of emphasis in assisting local owners for improving FireWise in our area is very discerning for me. And I'd like to see a bigger emphasis on that. Obviously, what we've seen in the last 3 years, the impact of the Holiday Farm fire, and what we're enduring now with the Lookout fire and our brothers and sisters in the greater Oak Ridge area, it's of great concern. So any emphasis that can be put on the FireWise program is going to be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hooton. Sandy Mann will be followed by Alan McWayne.
Morning, Commissioners. I always get emotional about stuff, sorry. Anyway, can you hear me okay?
Very well, thank you.
I'm not used to using a mic. And people hear me? Okay. I'm Sandy Mann, property owner in West Eugene, substitute teacher, Lane ESD, small farmer. The lots out there are 2, 3 parcels long. Most of you know me except Commissioner Suniga. Hi. Anyway, I have a hard time being concise. I'll try. I'm going to just speak about the Lane Event Center. I live in West Eugene. Most people out there don't want it. And at the fairgrounds. I live out there. I didn't move here to come to Portland, Seattle, LA. The parking. I know there's been some talk about zoning, but there's a wonderful stadium by Hamlin Middle School. Can't we share? I've also heard somebody I saw someone in the Weekly write, how about a stadium out by Valley River Center? I don't know. I don't know much about the land out there. It was a suggestion. How about Florence? I don't know. Another option. There's too much infill. People don't want it there. I haven't done an official survey. I run for county commissioner 3 times. I'm running for city council November 2024, Ward 1. I haven't done an official survey, but I've done a research assistant. You can just go out there and see the signs. People don't want it. The majority of people, my neighbors, they don't want it there. Let me be concise. Tough Times also call for money to be allocated, in my opinion, for things like food insecurity, housing, mental health, physical health. I wrote so much down. Safety issues. I was driving by with a friend last week, City View, between, help me out with the streets, West 18th, Arthur, City View, in front of the HIV Alliance, broad daylight, a guy shooting himself up in the chest. I couldn't even look at it. I have somebody, I went to Albertsons on 18th Street last night, 30 seconds, oh boy, with their kids, 4 kids, same guy, same thing, shooting up on West 11th. I think these are priorities instead of spending millions of dollars on a stadium. If you follow the money, is it all about money? How about what the people want? Most people don't want it. I'll do a study if you want. Last thing, 6 seconds. When was it? 2019, they wanted a new Lane County Courthouse. I'm sorry, you were surprised people voted against it. I wasn't. I think you need to get out there and be in touch with the people and what they want. 64% voted that down. I knew they would, because there was plenty of room.
Thank you, Ms. Mann. And as I told Mr. Umenhofer earlier, written testimony is always welcome. Thank you.
I'm sorry, what?
As I told Mr. Umenhofer earlier, written testimony is always welcome beyond your oral. Thank you very much.
I guess I've said what I did. We don't want it there. Springfield.
Thank you, Ms. Mann.
U of O, Lawrence. Think about it.
Next is Alan McWayne, who will be followed by Richard Boyles.
Good morning. Alan McWayne. The updated master plan raises many questions about the M Stadium. The county has spent $700,000 on the current stadium design, yet the master plan shows it located in the southwest corner with 4 buildings removed. This large stadium size leaves only 10 acres of open central space, but a minimum of 18 acres are needed for existing activities. The plan recommends not adding any projects which would reduce that. The stadium would neither contribute to the LEC mission nor support existing activities. The mission does not include building a stadium for a private baseball team. The plan states that the stadium would dominate the residential character of the surrounding neighborhood, yet there is no public input. The stadium is costly, unprofitable, and not recommended because it won't generate positive revenue for the LEC, unquote, with an annual loss of $200,000. There's no pro forma projected operating budget or revenue stream. While considering a $100 million stadium, LEC currently needs $52 million in maintenance and renovation. The big ideas graph in the plan does not favor the stadium in return on investment. The open-air stadium or multi-use facility really accommodates only 2 uses, baseball and concerts during the warmer months, with these events subject to increasing heat and smoke, and the M's just canceled 2 games this week. All other proposed LEC buildings or renovations would be indoor and climate controlled. The full minor league ballpark feasibility study is currently on hold since 2021. Meanwhile, the community demand data was provided by Elmore Sports Group, the owner of the M's. The board is considering this plan just before their 2-option decision next week on the 29th and the M's September 30th deadline. Yet the master plan process is on hold this year until December. Finally, the consultants are asking the board for direction in future land use to reaffirm their commitment to remain at the current site before continuing the master plan process. And to summarize, the baseball stadium has 4 strikes. 1, it's costly and unprofitable. It's too large. Its multi-uses are actually only 2 during the warmer months. And finally, there is no completed plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McWayne. Richard Boyles will be followed by Cliff Richardson.
Good morning, Chair Farr, Commissioners. My name is Richard Boyles. I'm a Lane County business owner and a representative of Taxpayers for Transparency, which Dana Terrell introduced to you a bit ago. Your agenda next week includes an item that requests further investment in the design of an M's stadium. I suggest that it's premature for you to spend additional money on design of that facility, and I urge you to decline to make that commitment until you have answers to some critical questions. Those questions include how the large capital gap would be closed. Why would you spend funds on a project that you can't see, that no one has provided a path for financing? You should also consider what will be displaced. The large footprint of the stadium is of concern to many users of the Lane Event Center already. The Oregon Logging Conference has indicated that they would not be able to continue there, and there are others who have concerns, but perhaps don't yet have enough information to make a decision. As has been suggested earlier, there is no operating plan. You don't have information really about how the stadium would be operated. Will there be any revenues to the county? What costs? Are maintenance costs to be borne by the county? There's a lot of information that is still not available, and it is not available nearly a year after this first supposed deadline for the M's to have a decision from you. So I would suggest that it's imprudent to commit funds until you have answers to those questions. And I would also suggest that your decision should be centered on ROI to the county and the community as well. And as part of the funding mechanism currently contemplated is the allocation of TRT, 20 years worth of TRT, which would preclude any other tourism-related or any, I'll say, tourism-related facility from being constructed for that period of time. You should be looking at the return on investment consistent with statute for allocating TRT, if not the actual law, then the spirit of that law, which suggests that those funds are to be used to encourage tourism and increase overnight stays in our community. I'll also state my support for restarting the Lane Events Center master plan process. Others have spoken to that eloquently, so I will leave my remarks at that point. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Boyles. Cliff Richardson will be followed by Ronald C. Mann.
Good morning, Commissioner Farr, Commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you again. You're in luck. I didn't prepare a statement today. So last time I took way too long. I have a habit of doing that, so I will be brief. I want to start off my comments. First of all, my sincere thanks on behalf of the community up there with the Lane County Sheriff's Department. Sheriff Harold and his crew have done a remarkable job, I think, in clarifying our evacuation, listening to the public, and keeping us safe. When we addressed our concerns about patrols in the area, they listened, and I think they took that to note and promised that they would correspond accordingly. So thank you, big heads up for them. We thank them and appreciate them. Having said that, their involvement coming up to us and involving directly with the community is important. I would urge those in the county that are working with us, both in committees and other such, to come up and be more heads up with the community, come up and talk to the community, engage with the community, get their feeling. I can recall the other night when I got a call from my colleague, Mary Ellen Wheeler, and she was evacuating a person out of the Holiday Farm Fire Resort. And just the visual of that fire coming up over the ridge from where it started on the backside of Lookout Ridge and coming up over and in view and coming down over towards Toketee was a scary message that I had on the phone, not only with the resident that she was trying to evacuate. Two, with another part of my comments I'd like to address is recently we addressed evacuations, locals helping locals in the long-term recovery group with a center down at Walterville. It was for a cooling center and for air purifier for those folks coming out of the McKenzie Valley. And it was received, not a lot of people, granted, but rather than taking the option of going to Lowell High School, which to many of the McKenzie residents did not make any bit of sense, to go from one fire zone, level 1, level 2, level 3, over to another fire zone in the Lowell district, which we have nothing against Lowell High School. We compete with them on the courts. We sometimes win, they sometimes win. Having said that, it didn't make sense for us to send our community down one river valley and up another for evacuation. We would ask that we do a little bit more coordination with local people, those in the county, talk to us that are on the ground with our local residents, and maybe reestablishing some of those other resources for our community is moving forward. We're 6 weeks out from the end of this fire season, so we want to keep that in mind. We've had success, but we're still 6 weeks out. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. Ronald C. Mann is next. Mr. Mann is the last person signed up for the first round in Harris Hall.
Thank you. I'm here to talk about the new erosion control measure that the council is considering has been put together by Lane County staff. This became known to me about Thursday of last week. Many of us in the Florence area hadn't been aware that this was happening, and it was happening kind of behind the scenes. I understand it was posted on the Lane County website. However, getting around the Lane County website is kind of a labyrinth, and for many people, it just isn't going to happen. People are going to go in there, spend a few minutes running around, and they aren't computer savvy, and they're lost. So this came to our attention, and we read the measure, several of us. We haven't had time to formulate a good response, because I think a good response is required in this situation. The extent that which this measure, if passed as it stands right now, will slow down building permits. It will be rife for people to go beyond what the code allows, which you don't want. You don't want people not following the rules of law. And these codes are rules of law. The staff has indicated that they believe that this is a state mandate. The state mandate is to monitor. Monitor means to watch and observe, take notes, figure out what's going on, have data, not just to arbitrarily come out and set down a rules of procedure that are going to take away freedoms of usage of one's land and their property. I'm a builder, and I've been a builder for nearly 50 years in the Florence area. And what I find is that the Lane County system of building permit and planning is one of the most Neolithic things, or not Neolithic, one of the prehistoric systems out there. They don't do well. We have to drive over here to get any kind of action. If we add another layer of oversight without first justifying it economically, scientifically, there's no studies that say that we are from single family or from the average rural individual living out there is actually contributing to any erosion problems in the streams and rivers. This measure has such a large impact, it deserves the scrutiny of science, the scrutiny of the council, and time for us to respond. I would ask that the council consider, if not voting it down and asking staff to reevaluate their position, to consider tabling this till we can formulate and get the information out to the people in the county. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Mann. As I stated, Mr. Mann was the last person signed up in Harris Hall. We'll now go to online testimony, and I'll turn that over to Ms. Jones in just a second. After the online testimony, I'll come back to Harris Hall, look around and see if anyone else wishes to address the Board of County Commissioners this morning. So, Ms. Jones, do we have anyone signed up online?
Thank you, Chair Farr. We do have people signed up. So at this time, we will begin the online public comment portion. If you have signed up for public comment, please raise your virtual hand at this time, and I will call you in the order the hands were raised. You will have the option to be on camera if you like, so when I unmute your microphone, let me know if you'd like me to put you on camera before beginning your public comment. We will begin with Seth Mead, followed by Chris McAllister. Seth, I will unmute your microphone. And if you would let me know if you'd like to be on camera.
You can put me on camera, no worries.
Okay, one moment. Let me switch you. You're going to see a button to switch over to being a panelist and being on camera. There we go. And I will begin the timer. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning. Thank you. Yeah, this is regarding proposed ordinance 23-06, the erosion control thing Ron was just talking about, which I am, as it's currently written, adamantly opposed to. But I'll be succinct here. If you do move forward with this exemption, or if you do move forward with this, an exemption should be added for restoration activities that result in a net gain of fish and wildlife habitat and or an increase in ecosystem services that directly benefit and improve water quality. If you can afford to provide exemptions for agricultural, forest, gas, oil, and mining activities, all of which are land use activities that are well known to be significant contributors of non-point source pollution into our public waters, then there is no excuse for restoration to not get an exemption as well. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for your public comment. One moment, I will switch to Chris McAllister. Just a second. Mr. McAllister, I'm going to unmute your microphone. You will be followed by Olivia Doran. Mr. McAllister, I'm unmuting your microphone. Would you like to be on camera?
Yes, please.
One moment.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Chris McAllister.
McAllister, you do need to unmute your camera. There you go.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you, Ms. Jones. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Chris McAllister. I come from Springfield. I am a member of not only the greater community, but also the dialed community that's trying to serve the unhoused and emergency management needs of our community of unsheltered and unstably sheltered folks. From Egan to fire shelter, the work is never done. And as commissioners, I understand that y'all know this. I am concerned about the secondary nature that our unhoused folks get in times of emergency. We are passed from emergency management to the Human Service Division, who does not follow the incident's command structure. Items set up for the heat wave on Wednesday and Thursday were shut down by the time Friday, Saturday, Sunday rolled out, when some of the thickest smoke and some of the heat and fire replaced some of the concerns of the community. However, items that we're going to be working towards our unsheltered because of the heat and the long-term nature of them being stuck out were secondary and redirected, not incorrectly to fire victims, but there was no pickup of the ball after it was handed off. We need to be able to have a system for all. We need to have less utilitarian, the greatest amount of good for the greatest amount of people, because the disenfranchised, those who are not seen, those who are not recognized are the ones who fall through the cracks. Whether it's the people who are trying to rebuild up in Blue River, or it's the people who are struggling to get resheltered after the last bout of COVID took their job, or outsourced to Guatemala. We are a community together, and we need to rise. We need to use the real data and support our HSD staff doing HSD things, and let emergency management and public health also be heard as we try and uncover these new futures together. We haven't been here before with the combination of parts that we have, or with the combination of people or leadership that we've had. But we can do better, and we will do better if we're given the opportunity to do so. I am proud of the work that we do in the county. I'm proud of the work that we do in individual rural cities who are often having to carry loads while waiting for the state and federal systems to catch up with things that they see every day. I'm proud to be of Lane County. I want Springfield to shine as well. Please do not unsee our Springfielders as we deal with countywide regional solutions. Springfield has 514 people approximately that are unsheltered, yet there is no place for them to be, whether it's in the winter or whether it's across the year. Recovery beds, developmentally disabled beds, women's beds, trans beds. We need our entire community to rise. Thank you, Commissioner Farr, Commissioner Buck, and Commissioner Traeger for being in the work.
Thank you for your public comment. Our next presenter is Olivia Doran. Olivia, I will unmute your microphone. And you, just a second. Olivia, would you like to be on camera?
Yes, please.
One moment. You should see your screen switching, and you'd need to turn on your camera and unmute your microphone. So your camera is still muted as well. There you go.
Hi, thanks for having me this morning. My name is Olivia Duran. I'm a restoration program manager with the Freshwater Trust. We're an Oregon-based nonprofit with a mission to preserve and restore freshwater ecosystems. We have been working with Lane County staff to develop 2 projects that plant native trees and shrubs along riverbanks on county-owned land. The goal of these projects is to improve water quality and wildlife habitat. We provide all funding, all labor to remove invasive vegetation, plant native trees and shrubs, and provide stewardship and monitoring for 20 years after planting to ensure that sites meet defined performance standards, and there is more detail available in your board packets. Board Order 2308-2208 on the consent calendar today requests your authorization for the county administrator to enter into easements with the Freshwater Trust that protect plantings at these projects. At their meeting last week, the Parks Advisory Committee recommended that the board approve this board order, and I respectfully request that the board do so this morning. That's all I have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your public comments. I will check one more time to see if we have anyone else ready to speak. Whoops, that kind of just switched on me. If you have signed up for public comment and you have not raised your hand and given public comment, please do so now if you would like to be considered. Chair Farr, I do not see any additional hands raising, so I'll return to you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones, for handling the online comment. And to the people in Harris Hall and to everyone listening, you know, I was a city councilor for 10 years before I became a Lane County Commissioner. And at city council public hearings, we have had a lot of testimony, and quite often it was the same people showing up, giving us their 3 minutes, quite often on different subjects, sometimes on the same subject. That's not the case here at the Board of County Commissioners. Quite often we see people who have never spoken before, who have only spoken on a single issue, and they come just very rarely to the Board of County Commissioners to testify. That's why we're allowing the full 3 minutes, and that's why we're allowing as much time as we need this morning for public testimony. So I'll look around Harris Hall to see if there's anyone else here who is interested in addressing the Board of County Commissioners this morning. I see one person. Would you please step to the mic and state your name for the record, please?
Buenos dias. My name is Alan Benavides. I'm the general manager with the Eugene Emeralds. Thanks for the time and the work you guys do. And, you know, thoughts out to the folks out in the fires and whatnot that continue to ravage our community. Just briefly want to talk about what I believe is a strong case for the facility at the fairgrounds. There's a lot of data that you guys have. So some folks may not have seen it, but there's a strong case for a facility that will host hundreds of events at this facility. While it may be a ballpark primarily that will be operated by the Emeralds in conjunction with the county, there will be hundreds of events at this facility that are used throughout the country at other ballparks and minor league facilities. You can see the transformative nature of a facility like this that happens to cities. It's a catalyst for growth. It'll improve the fairgrounds, an aging fairgrounds that needs help. We really look forward to working with Corey and the staff out there and the county. But some of the events that we're currently considering in negotiations with is doing a big Cinco de Mayo event, USA versus Mexico amateur event, similar to what they do in Portland for, St. Patty's Day. We've got graduations hopefully lined up. We've got an agreement with the Savannah Bananas to come out hopefully in 2026, playing some Oktoberfest events with our partners in Texas. You know, it's a lot of dog competitions that happen throughout minor league parks like in Kannapolis and in Fort Wayne. The facility has a plan to have an indoor banquet facility, hopefully that'll host, a couple hundred to 250 people, where we can host chamber events, nonprofit events, charity events, and corporate events. We're also looking at working with OSAA and doing high school baseball tournaments and a lot of nonprofit events. Operating this facility will be the Emeralds and working with the county. You've been hearing about the logging conference particularly, and while we haven't talked to them, we believe that we can make that even a better event by having equipment out on the field, using the video board to highlight products and whatnot, and using the concourse for vendors and whatnot. This facility will be open for all events at the fairgrounds, not just the Emeralds. It can also be used for an emergency resource during some awful times of, wildfires and whatnot. And what's nice about having an open air structure like this is that if the earthquake ever happens, which which hopefully never does. But if it does, it'll be great to have an open-air resource like this where we can hopefully put people on the field and have a safe place for folks. And as far as an operating agreement, it has been in negotiations for months. It's not something that we can turn over in a weekend. We've been working on that for a long time, and you'll be seeing that soon. And finally, with the neighborhood, there is a lot of support in the neighborhood. We have, dozens and dozens, maybe hundreds of calls and emails from folks who are supportive. They choose maybe not to put a support sign on the lawn because they're afraid of being harassed by neighbors, but we do have a letter of support from the Neighborhood Association, and we look forward to working and being an advocate for Jefferson West Side and the West Side. I live on the West Side. The West Side's kind of sometimes forgotten, it seems like, in our community, but we really do look forward to working with you guys. So thank you again. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Benavides. That is the culmination of public testimony this morning. I see no further public testimony. And I'll turn it over to the board for response and/or remonstrances. I'll look around the board for any comments this morning. Commissioner Lovell.
Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Buck.
Again, great time to be a commissioner, seeing everyone come in and doing a public testimony. This is, like I said, this is where government happens. I love to see you come in and tell me what we're doing right or wrong or what we can improve on. And so in light of some of the things that we've talked about today, obviously we've been chasing down the path of hearing a lot of land management development issues and challenges. And so I guess, Chair, part of my comments would be maybe to put out a question to the rest of the board. Would it be time for us to maybe make some sort of a motion to formally hear some of these cases, or to move some of these issues that seem to be stalled in a more expeditious way to us to look at? So that's one question I have that I can put forward. And as far as the weeks coming up with the stadium and the Lane Event Center issues that we have coming ahead of us, I really love the question that one of our speakers said today is, what is our highest and what's a larger vision for this property? I think that's a really important question for all of us to ask going forward, is what is the vision not only of this property, but of our community at large? Obviously, we live in a very different world than we lived in 4 years ago. People have different priorities. We're now coming back, I think, to a pendulum where families are important, homes are important, caring for the elderly is important, veterans, those that are unhoused. I think we're coming back to a place where we are looking more inwardly about how we can help one another and be on the same page rather than divisive, and I think that's encouraging for me. And so I want to add that also to this question, that what is our vision for the future, and how can we make it the vision that really we can be proud of 40 or 50 years down the road for the next generation? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Lowell. And regarding questions on agendas, you know, as we all know, that there's a time and place for that question. Commissioner Buck will be followed by Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. I want to thank everybody that came and spoke. We have more than our normal amount of folks today on a variety of subjects, and it always makes it more interesting for us because we're dealing with a lot of different things at the same time. I will save comments regarding the Lane Events Master Plan until we have that particular meeting. But I specifically wanted to talk about fire, since that is first and foremost on my mind. We have had 4 fires on the east side, closest in our district. 2 have been mainly wrapped up, Priceboro and Salmon Fire, thankfully. We still have 2 fires on our landscape that are quite large, and we still need to be very diligent on them both. The Bedrock Fire, as well as the Lookout Fire. And they're not put to bed yet, although I've been in several meetings, and they're doing very good work on our landscape. I want to acknowledge all the resources and teams and firefighters that have come from a variety of different locations and out of state. I think about them. I think about their families. I am reminded that we lost a firefighter a couple of years ago in the very location that we have a fire today. I have the opportunity occasionally to be able to welcome the new teams that come in. They rotate every 2 weeks, and thank them for their work here, welcome them to Lane County, and really, we all know each other. We've been doing this for several years, year after year. I know their teams, and although they're wonderful people, I would probably not like to meet them in that way each summer. We have already burnt at least 40,000 acres on the east side between Bedrock Fire, Salmon, and the Lookout Fire. We have nearly 2,000 people working on those fires, around 1,000 for both Bedrock and 1,000 for Lookout. That's a lot of people that have come into our community to make sure that we're safe and resources and assets are safe. So I just want us to consider that at this moment. And this is not unusual for Lane County. This is happening year after year after year. And we, of course, have heard from folks up the McKenzie. Thank you very much for coming to speak. I agree with everything that they have had to say. I've been pushing as hard as I possibly can, and I will continue to do that for recovery. But as we have fires every summer, it makes it harder and harder to attract people back upriver in order for recovery. It limits economic activity that is tied to tourism during the year and puts those small businesses in jeopardy. And we need them. We need them back desperately in order to recover upriver. It was brought up that they're really looking for our help right now. And I hope we can all consider that. We've had a team in working on recovery. It's a small but mighty team. But there's just, it's been too long, right? It's been 3 years. It's been too long. And these rebuilding and recovery in rural areas is absolutely different than how you would recover and rebuild within an urban growth boundary. It's fundamentally different laws altogether. And it is a complex onion to peel. And I'll continue to do that with you. And it would be very helpful to have the rest of my colleagues assist with that as much as they have extra time to do so. I did earlier take a much-needed break, and I went to Hawaii, which was lovely the first week, and then the Maui fires hit. And it absolutely rewound in my mind everything that happened during the Holiday Farm fire, although I was not in the middle of emergency management at the time. You know, I'm an outsider there. And then, of course, a couple days later, the fires here really flared up. And so that perspective of seeing what happened on this lovely island that people probably been to and on their vacations just reminded me of how absolutely fantastic our emergency response is in Lane County. And I shared that yesterday with the congressional delegation that had a fire briefing. We have the best of the best working on our fire response here locally, and they work during any other emergency disaster as well. I have every confidence that they'll be able to help with both wrapping up the Bedrock and the Lookout fire. But comparatively speaking to the Maui fires, it is night and day. And I can see several steps down the road that Maui's going to have to engage in recovery that we've already been through. And I've seen people acknowledge from upriver similar sentiments and reactions to the Maui fire. If there's any opportunity for me to reach out and assist them, I will absolutely do so. I was in touch with people while I was there, from emergency management to their congressional staff. They know that I'm available And while we know what they're in for, they may not know yet. And I hope that we can share our empathy with them and just remind ourselves that we've got recovery to do here as well. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Buck, thank you. Commissioner Seneca.
Yeah, Melody, Steve, and Tim, thank you guys for coming. I think Commissioner Buck knows that I will do everything I can to help facilitate this and get you guys some answers. Whether that means hopping in a van and driving back up there and seeing you guys again, I'm more than willing. Ron Mann, looks like he left, about the erosion control concern. That may be something we need to workshop with and look at, talk to some of our contractors and see where they're at on it and how this is really going to affect them. It's really the first I'm hearing from some of our contractors. So we'll be interested to see how that presentation goes on later today. Richard, Alan, I have a lot of respect for both of you guys. Your guys' work ethic's unwavering. And this is a perfect example of what our email inbox looks like, 50-50-ish. In fact, just yesterday I was at a meeting, and after the meeting we were kind of having a cup of coffee and talking, get pulled over to one side. We can't build the M's. That's not what the TRT's for. 7 minutes later, get pulled to the other side. We have to build the M's. The M's belong here in Eugene. So just know we're taking these decisions very, very seriously. Mr. Prophet, I was really hoping we would be in a different position come this week. I watched your and Dan's meeting that Dan recorded. And hopefully we can still work with the county and get this thing put together and try and get you across the finish line. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Seneca. Vice Chair Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. I, too, will reserve much comment about the proposed multipurpose stadium facility until that is an agenda item, but I do appreciate everyone's testimony. What I will say, somewhat related, is around planning. I take a both-and approach. Nothing is static or stagnant here at the county or really anywhere, and so planning is iterative and dynamic and uses whatever information and reality is on the ground in any given moment. For example, at the Lane Event Center, I say we, I serve on the Fair Board as your liaison to the Fair Board. We approved the application and eventually were awarded some grant dollars to make improvements to other buildings that would not be impacted directly by the construction of a stadium. But we don't put things at a standstill. We don't put any one thing at a standstill until we figure out the whole thing. So we're making improvements to facilities, to doors, to HVAC systems, to restrooms, because it's what we know we need. It's what's in front of us. It's the resource that's available. It's what we're doing to continually try to improve with the tools that are available to us. So I just want to assure folks that for me, planning is, again, iterative, dynamic, it's ongoing, it's informed by changes as they happen. We sort of always have to build the ship as we sail it. So that's just an important piece that I wanted to share. I want to really appreciate the folks from Upriver coming to share with us in the midst of everything you're going through, both recovering from past fires and also with fire on the landscape now. I can't imagine the stress and strain and anxiety you're under, and for you to take the time to come into town and talk to us personally really means a lot. And I absolutely stand with my colleague, Commissioner Buck. I want to thank her for her tireless work at the federal, state, local level, and in the communities immediately affected to advocate and help you all recover. I have a statement I want to make on a topic that did not come up in public comment because it is not fully public knowledge yet, but will be later today. But it came to my attention in advance of a public release that Peace Health is intending to close the services provided at their University District location, including the emergency room and some other medical services. And as I learn more, I may be seeking support from my colleagues to weigh in on this, as it is a matter of great concern, particularly for us in our role as the local public health authority. The closure will have far-reaching negative impacts. It will result in increased transit time for emergency response vehicles addressing trauma that happened here in Eugene. It will similarly impact our neighbors and constituents who are self-transporting. Imagine a parent with an injured or scared child who's had a bad fall resulting in a broken bone or requiring stitches, one who's ingested something poisonous or is struggling with an asthma attack where every minute counts. We've all seen what traffic can look like getting over the river at certain times of day. It will mean the loss of easily accessible care and services for students in the university area where thousands of young people, most without cars, now live just a few short blocks from an ER, and they'll be many miles away from help in an emergency. Consider the impact on our unhoused neighbors. Those who experience a crisis here in our downtown, for instance, will be taken all the way out to River Bend and then discharged from care 6 miles or more away from where they were first picked up. This will also mean potentially the closure of the acute care for the elderly, or ACE unit, where I had a family member spend her final days. ACE unit provides highly specialized, uniquely tailored palliative care for elders in our community. We will lose the 3 rooms in what's called the secured area as part of the emergency department at University District. These are dedicated, specially equipped spaces for people in crisis and expressing suicidal ideation, where they can be safely held and treated. The secured area is often full, meaning mental health patients are then in unsecured emergency department rooms. It is not clear yet if Sacred Heart will expand the number of such rooms at Riverbend. Finally, in addition to the impacts on healthcare delivery, this closure will mean the loss of hundreds of local jobs, many of them unionized, providing good wages and benefits. These jobs include nurses, technicians, maintenance and janitorial professionals, food service and laundry workers, administrative positions, and more. It is alarming to think that the 3rd largest city in this state will have no emergency room. This closure will decrease access and degrade health care in our community, and we should all be very concerned. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Trieger. And I will not add on to that particular item. Peace Health is in the process of distributing the news across the affected parties this morning. I believe that began at about 7 o'clock this morning. Thank you for that. You know, I've got to point out a couple of testimonies that were here. Melanie Stanley, your work in restoring the services that you provide in Blue River has been intrepid. You mentioned Becky Taylor and the amazing work that was done to allow for the return to the historic setbacks, basically, is what happened with the streets up there. It was pretty amazing, but it has to be in conjunction with swift movement on approval of projects. I think we've been heard loud and clear. And thanks again for once again pointing out Becky Taylor's intrepid work of the river. And Mr. Richardson, you still here? Yeah, thanks. You invited, I accept what seemed like an invitation to come and see you. I spent a lot of time up the Mackenzie River before and after the Holiday Farm fire. I've seen it before, I've seen it after. I've walked your streets in Blue River and around. You count on my call to come up and visit you, and actually let's walk around, touch things that you're talking about. That's the best way to see and do stuff. I would like to mention one other thing, Mr. Mokrahajski, that regarding a letter that I received personally yesterday, I distributed to the rest of the Board of County Commissioners, is a commendation. And you know, we hear commendations every now and then, but in this one it came from the climate writers. And we wish to commend Lane County and the Waste Management Division in particular for publishing the Waste Wise News School Edition. And I think members of our waste management staff are here in the audience. And what a great resource for our school children. We're especially impressed by the page on climate resiliency, sincerely signed by a host of people. So I wanted to pass that. It's pretty poignant that you actually happened to be here to hear me making this statement. So thank you for that. And regarding planning and regarding facilities, we do have a work session and work next week regarding the testimony that we received this morning, regarding the M's and the fairgrounds. We'll talk more about that. But planning does happen in Lane County. You know, the fairgrounds itself, when I was the liaison, I was liaison to the Fair Board for many years. And at that point in time, and Corey's nodding his head, we had a little bit of planning change in the north and west corner of the fairgrounds, where we added permanent supportive housing. The Fair Board approved that. It was a small addition, but things do change and planning does happen. And we do change our existing footprints from time to time based upon the existent need. And I'd like to point that out. You can drive by there. It's the corner of, I believe that's Polk Street and 13th Avenue. Is that Polk? Yeah. Taylor. That's Taylor and 13th Avenue. Beautiful facility that's housing women with children, and it's permanent supportive housing. The other thing I'd like to talk about regarding planning, and I do this quite often, years ago, many of us had a plan for a permanent farmers market in downtown, Lane County Farmers Market in downtown Eugene. We worked that plan, we had to make land exchanges, and it was really a long process. And if you turn around and look at Lane County planning in action, I invite you to turn around right now, look across the street at the permanent facility for Lane County Farmers Market is operating today. Planning does happen, as Vice Chair Trieger mentioned. It's dynamic. Things occur, changes occur based upon new information and new technology, for instance, and new needs in the community. So we'd like to thank you for your testimony this morning. We'll move along right now to our next item on the agenda. The next item is our consent calendar. We consider the consent calendar as a block of items. If you check online, click on View Items, you'll see the specific testimony, the specific information that the Board of County Commissioners has considered before passing the consent calendar as a single motion. If anything needed to be pulled from the consent calendar, it would have been pulled for separate discussion. Vice Chair Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. I move approval of the consent calendar for Tuesday, August 22nd, 2023, with the exception of item E1, which we will move to our Public Works item later on the agenda.
I'll second.
Moved by Vice Chair Trieger and seconded by Commissioner Buck. We have our consent calendar for August 22nd. Discussion to the motion? I see no discussion. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Then we'll step down the calendar into Public Works. And Mr. Markowski, today we have a discussion on the Glenwood Transfer Station move, design, public feedback, cost, and upcoming projects. And it'll be by, I'll ask you to introduce Mr. Orlandini. Wait, I just did, didn't I? But, and Mr. Orlandini, I think we'll wrap the item pull from the consent calendar kind of at the end of this particular item, if that works well for you.
Best.
Mr. Markowski.
Jeff Orlandini, excuse me, Chair, is our Waste Management Division Manager, and we'll take this item. And Dan Hurley, our Public Works Director, is also here. Okay, and then I'm supposed to do some sort of share here. Anybody else know how to share that up?
Tanya's coming to your rescue.
Help us coming.
Thanks. You did give me instructions.
While Tanya's coming to the rescue, I'd like to point out that Tanya is what makes this meeting happen in the morning. The immense amount of work that goes into just getting this dais ready, and it's just really your work that you do for that, Tanya.
Okay. So, thank you for sharing that. I'd love to have that group out that wrote that, and they could come check out Glenwood and the landfill. It's our favorite tour that we offer. So, my goal today, there was originally a work item from the board, mainly concerning the Glenwood transfer station and a public outreach process and possibly options about moving or not. And I wanted to also wrap in some of the other major projects that we have on our plate, because we're going to be coming back to you with a pretty major decision around this mixed waste processing facility, and I think it's only fair that we see the scope of projects that we have on our plate while this body considers that option. So I want it to be clear that that decision has not been made. That's a board decision around the mixed waste processing facility. And so while the agenda, the board packet may read as if these are all done deals, they're not. We're trying to give the board an update, and I'll kind of go through each one and talk about what our next steps would be. And so all of these projects, these are the projects that we'll talk about, as well as the Recycling Modernization Act and the impact on our transfer stations, because while it's a very positive move, it will have some impacts on, in particular, our smaller rural transfer stations, the ability to accept more materials. But these are all projects we're exploring based on either a need for infrastructure improvements and or waste reduction and diversion. So starting with the Glenwood remodel. So what you'll find on this slide is, in essence, the very, very preliminary work. We have a consultant on board who's going to give us closer to 30% design plans for Glenwood, so we'll be able to come back to you all showing you what the design plans would look like. But their rough estimates so far, and they're very early ones, are that we're around the same price, whether we rebuild at Glenwood or we build a brand new transfer station facility. Some of that is due to how difficult it is to rebuild while staying open. And, you know, we could identify another site and open temporarily and close Glenwood, but at that point, I don't know if that would make much sense and would probably cost us more money. So it's very difficult to build while staying open, but not impossible. We're also talking about a lot of new building there. So our current administration offices are in portable buildings that are aging and really wouldn't be something that you'd want to commit to for another 30 years. So there's a lot of the similar building that you'd be doing even if you stayed there. The main difference between the two would be the purchase of land. So when we identify another location, it would be purchasing that land and then assessing that land to determine what it would take to prep that so that it could be built on. Now, we would be able to recoup some of those costs, maybe even equal or more, by selling the Glenwood property, would be, you know, the idea. So obviously we have an asset in Glenwood, and so if we're buying a new piece of land and then having to develop it so that we could build on it, hopefully we could recoup some of that cost through the selling of Glenwood. So, like I said, we are working with a consultant to get design plans both for a rebuild at Glenwood as well as general design plans for a new transfer station, what that would look like. This is the Glenwood property. You can see the total property, and then what we've done is in the orange is highlighted what is developable. So that property has some setbacks due to wetlands. There's a high voltage line easement through there. So the total property is a little over 20 acres. We estimate it's about 13 and a half developable. So it's important not only for us to know in terms of the size of that property, but also for, you know, City of Springfield, if they were to want to acquire that property, what is actually developable based on wetlands and that easement for that power line. And so you can see that essentially we're pretty maxed out with what we have. That is ample space to be able to rebuild. Ideally, it would be a build from scratch with that type of space. And then, you know, we also have to remember that Glenwood serves as our operations hub. So our transfer operations program, which is all of the haul trucks that go and, you know, collect all the materials from those rural transfer stations and bring them to the landfill or recycling partners. All of those trucks, all those trailers, they're all parked at Glenwood. That staff, for the most part, they meet at Glenwood. That's where they come in. They take their lunches at Glenwood. They end their day at Glenwood. So it's more than kind of a traditional transfer station. You know, I would say that something like a Florence or Cottage Grove would be maybe what you'd think of with more traditional, where, you know, you have some staff on site, but you don't have a tremendous amount of extra equipment there. Glenwood serves as that, as well as our administrative headquarters. And so, you know, we have upwards of 20 offices, a very small meeting space right now. So the new design plans would incorporate us having, you know, a visitor center so that when Bring brings out school groups to visit, you know, there's a more, I mean, right now they just meet outside in the recycle area, rain or shine, you know, having more of a visitor center, and then new administration offices as well. And we can, some of this gets complicated with the property we're looking at in Goshen that we'll talk about later, one of the items that Commissioner Farr pulled. You know, we can talk about alternative uses there if it wasn't to be an IMRF, what we could use that part for, potentially for some of that equipment, so that we wouldn't have to build such a large transfer station. So there are some different options out there. The board directed us to do a public outreach plan. And so this is our current plan for that. We would like to go out in November to try to find a partner to do that. We've actually talked with Parks. You know, they had a public outreach plan when they were looking at the levee. So we've talked to them a bit about the process they used, you know, how they surveyed folks outside of just, you know, users at Glenwood, because that's one thing that we also need to remember. We want to focus on users at Glenwood, but also the broader community. We really want to get a sense of where people are coming from, how often they're using that transfer station, what it would mean to move it, and how far away we would move it, and how that would impact folks. And so that would include not only users of the current transfer station, but also the metro area and outreach survey to folks in the area, so that we can get a good sense of usage and really make that you know, a better informed decision on some potential alternative locations. That being said, there are not a tremendous amount of locations that would be seemingly appropriate for a transfer station, but this would still allow us to know whether it was West Eugene or Goshen area or somewhere out maybe farther in Springfield by International Paper, you know, somewhere, you know, like that. So there are areas in there disparate, so this will help us figure that out. We will develop that, we will complete that process, we'll develop our concept plans for both options, and we will come back to the board with that information to really make that informed decision on staying or leaving Glenwood. So that's our process for Glenwood. Cottage Grove is a project that we've talked about a few times. We have come very close with our consultant to getting our 30% design plans. It's about $11.2 million. That is the lower option. This is an option that allows us to use the current disposal area in essentially the way it is, but creates a brand new recycling area. It'll expand the ability of what we can dump right now where folks dispose of after they pay through that fee booth. It will expand there, so it'll allow us to increase the customer count, which we really anticipate Cottage Grove is one of the main transfer stations. We're going to see continued growth in terms of customer demand. It also covers our disposal area, which is a big cost. So currently that is an open disposal area, which causes a lot of issues for us with a site that large and having, I mean, it does rain here a bit. I wish it was raining right now. But you know, that really, as we develop new transfer stations, we're going to have to cover these disposal areas. It's not something we're going to be able to continue the way that we always have. So this is the basic concept. We're still whittling this down, but and it's a little hard to see to fit it all in there. But if you look to the top part where you see the letters N and M, that's where the new recycle area would be. So we purchased that house that is actually being deconstructed this week. That is right near that property. So it allows us to expand out there to create a whole different recycle area, which is similar to what we did at Florence. We have found that we really need to separate those and allow an opportunity to come in and out from recycle area if you don't want to dispose of waste, or vice versa. If you want to just dispose of waste, you're not stuck in a recycling line. Right now, this site, the Creswell site's very similar. They're really right next to each other. And so you get 5 to 10 people in the recycle area, and you start creating a bottleneck where people can't get through, or to get out of there, and there's a line out to the street to dispose, and you're kind of stuck. This eliminates that and allows for expansion of material collection that will be required under the Recycling Modernization Act. And so it really allows Cottage Grove to meet the needs of the future and even beyond. We have space galore out there. If in 10 years we decided to put something else, we have a lot of land, we have opportunity to do that. But this gets us what we need for the new rules coming down and to serve really as kind of a southern regional hub for us. So the Recycling Modernization Act, so essentially what this is going to mean for us is more plastics. And I think everyone that I talk to is very excited about the potential of being able to recycle more plastics. And when we talk about more plastics, we're talking about a lot more larger items. We're talking about bottles and jugs, tubs, even the plastic nursery pots, buckets and pails, containers, cups, all this stuff. Really exciting, really bulky. We're estimating right now that at our smaller transfer stations, this could really increase operations by 50%. So a site that we may go to once a week, we're going to have to go to maybe twice a week, because the way that we collect these items into, we've probably all seen them where you kind of put items in through the window or the top of it. They're going to fill up twice as quick because they're such bulky items. It's cost prohibitive to put compactors there that would squish all the plastics, and we're not really sure that that's how the partners want to take these plastics. So we're really concerned. I mean, it could be easily $1 million more per year to operate at these transfer stations just to collect these materials, because they're going to be, we're talking about the little swimming pools you buy, the little blue swimming pools, they could be recyclable. Sounds really great until, you know, you go to London transfer station, you're like, where are you going to put 50 of these pools? So we are concerned a bit about the requirement to take all these materials at some of our smaller transfer stations, the impact it could have on our operations, while also being very excited that we're able to take more materials. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. So then that gets us to the Integrated Material and Energy Recovery Facility, or the Waste Processing Facility. So these are the general stats on that facility. Again, we're coming back to the board in September with the specifics around costs and around what it would mean for fees in terms of being able to cover the cost of operating the system for the future. And what we'll be looking for is, you know, an approval to move forward with this and enter into a contract with bulk handling systems to do this. So we have not made any commitment to do that right now. That is a board decision. One will come back to you with all those specifics. I will say to the item that was pulled off of consent. So we currently have a contract with bulk handling to provide us 30% design plans for this facility. That tells us exactly how much it's going to cost to build the building. Okay, so currently we're estimating that at $30 million to prepare the land and have the building. This will give us an exact number for that. The reason we're asking for the contract amendment and increased money is that we've changed the location 3 times. So we originally went into this contract with the assumption it would be at Short Mountain Landfill. They started the work at Short Mountain Landfill, and then we realized that that was going to be hugely cost prohibitive to build. We were talking about 30-foot retaining walls and things like that in order to be able to build at the landfill. So we then started identifying properties in Goshen that would be suitable, and we had one property we were looking at purchasing, and that fell through, and so then we landed on this property. So a lot of it's been that they're doing different design every time we switch it, so it's gone over budget because of that. But this is simply to give us that number that helps us understand, and what they're doing. The amendment would allow them to do the soil analysis to really understand how much fill would they need to bring in, what would we need to do around stormwater. It's all that stuff to get that land ready to be built on. And so that's what we're doing. And again, that doesn't put us in any commitment to build this on this property, to build this facility. But I would argue that the work that they'll do, especially in terms of the topography and the soils analysis, will help us no matter what we decide to do with that property. So that was what was on the consent, was to add budget for that. And we can talk about that more if you want when we're done with this last slide here. So the estimates here just kind of take everything we've just talked about and show you that if we did everything that we would like to do, that would come to a grand total of about $72 million. Now, we're not proposing to do all of this next year or the year after, right? So it's not that we have to come up with $72 million in 1 year, but I just think it's important for us to see the impact and what it costs to do those things. Again, the top 2 are really infrastructure needs. Cottage Grove, we could limp along for another 5+ years. It'll be a little harder when the RMA comes online, but we could make that work. But it is becoming a very, very busy site. And I would argue we probably need to look at maybe opening that site an extra day to accommodate with our weekend traffic. It is very busy. We probably need to look at putting an operator down there that can help us maintain those trailers and those boxes as they fill up with the customer counts we see. Glenwood, we're putting patches on it right now. We're spending upwards of $100,000 to $200,000 every year to put Band-Aids on our current pit so that we can continue to run that tractor in there to move move that waste around so that the walls, keep their integrity. And so, we are putting these Band-Aids, but it is a site that's been along. I was born the same year Glenwood was, and I would like to say it's aging much worse than I am, but I know how I feel a lot of mornings, and I'm sure Glenwood is hurting too. So we definitely need to look at doing something with that sooner than later, because we are going to continue finding that we're putting a lot of money into it to kind of buy us a year or two at a time. So with that, I'll take any questions or comments.
Thank you, Mr. Rolandini. Good presentation. I'll look around to the board for questions, comments on the presentation so far. Commissioner Buck.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. The first thing I want to say is regarding the survey for our existing location in Glenwood. I actually can't wait for what comes out of that, because I think that's going to tell us a lot about whether we stick with that location or not. My hunch is that people really, really like it there.
They do.
And we will probably see a reflection of that in the survey back. And if we chose to relocate, I'm pretty sure we'll fill this room a couple times, at least. So it was good to know that the size of the existing property is still good for our needs, because part of my concern was, what if we outgrow that particular site after spending so much money and reinvesting in it? And how long would it take for us to outgrow that, given population increases in the area? So that's good to know. The heartache, if we stay there, is redeveloping while it's still in production. So I'm interested in hearing more about that as we progress down here. I guess in some ways, it's also really good to hear that Cottage Grove's transfer station is so popular. The only concern I have and I'm sure you already know, is that the traffic getting on and off in that location and the road that is on, we've all already done a lot of work on public safety of speed and injuries and fatalities on that particular road if they turn and go south. So if they can get on and off the freeway near the transfer site, that will be so much better for the folks that actually live south of the facility on that particular road. So hopefully you're already in touch with Becky Taylor and team on that location.
Yeah, we plan to get in touch with them. I mean, some of it was what we wanted to use the land that we purchased, which was this one residential spot, and you can't just put whatever you want there. But we're looking at that as well as the entry and exit, and how you can spread that out, how you could have more people. I'm sure people stack up, and sometimes they're waiting at the road. This eliminates that as a much more queue. But yeah, we haven't really discussed with Becky or her team the I-5 issue in terms of exit.
It's just an issue if they go in and, dump whatever they need to dump or recycle whatever they need to recycle, and then turn south on that road, on the regular road, rather than getting back on the freeway. I think that will be that will be troublesome with residents that live on that particular road, specifically because we have injuries and fatalities on that road in the past, and we took out a lot of trees and tree hazards in order to help mitigate that, and that was contentious in and of itself.
That's along Sears Road?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, so I just watch out with that and talk with traffic and planning about that a little bit. I'd want to guide people back onto the freeway as much as possible, if we can do so. I know that this is not being presented today, but I'm really interested in how we're going to finance these things. Do we have capital funding for an existing remodel at Glenwood? Do we have something already for Cottage Grove?
No, we've have reserve accounts for both. They're very minimal at this point. And so Cottage Grove at around $11 million isn't quite as concerning if that's the only project you were saving for and you said we're going to build that in 3 or 4 years. You could get pretty close to that. It is the menu of items, and currently our main mechanism for paying for our projects is through the fee structure.
Okay.
And that's what we'll be presenting next month with the mixed waste processing facility, is the impact on the fees at Short Mountain in order to cover the cost of that operation.
Would that go to a bond of some sort that those fees would then be paying, or how? Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'll be interested in seeing what that would be. I want people to continue to use the site, and we're always really sensitive about raising fees for basic services. So I'll want to know what that's about. And I'll talk more about the IMRF when we get to that particular item on the agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Buck. Further discussion? Commissioner Lovell?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, Mr. Orlandini, I'm just kind of curious. Do we currently own a site right now that we're planning on building this thing on?
We, in Goshen, we entered into a sale agreement. The ability to enter into that was approved by the board. The final actual purchase will come back to the board to make, to approve the final purchase. So what we've done is we've entered into a sale agreement contingent upon approval by the board, allowing us 120 days to do wetland delineation and access to ensure this is an appropriate site for us. And then we'll come back to the board with approval or denial of the actual purchase.
So we're in our due diligence phase, it sounds
Correct.
like. Yeah,
Yep.
okay, great, good to know. Because like you said, in the packet, it sounded like we'd already bought a piece of property, and I was shaking my head going, how did I miss that on my email, right? All right, so what I'm also curious is, and maybe this is, because we've combined these two items, putting the cart before the horse, and, there's some, obviously, Commissioner Buck has expressed some financing and some, obviously, it's always a money game. Aren't we after money for everything? And we don't seem to have enough to do what we need to do. So, there's some concerns we have. Some of my constituents in Springfield, obviously, this is in my district. People from Springfield are very cost conscious, fee conscious, as they say. And some of the, it's kind of like the M Stadium. It's kind of equally split. Some people want to see it somewhere else so that Glenwood could become this utopia riverfront property in great Shangri-La, or, we keep the transfer station where it is. I tend to side with Commissioner Buck on this issue. I think that's pretty well rooted and entrenched and probably going to stay there for a while. At least that's my opinion. Just out of curiosity, just for talking points going forward, is about our flow control of waste. Are we considering that in all of this discussion that we're having about property and IMRFs and all that kind of stuff, just basically?
Right now, what we'd be looking at would be simply, in order to fund the mixed waste processing facility, would be a fee increase on the tonnage fee at Short Mountain, and not a requirement that we would put in place for flow control. It would not be flow control in the traditional sense. The cities would determine whether they would want to implement that. So often your franchise contract might say, what you're required to pick up and where you're required to take it. But it's not something that we're right now looking at saying we would implement.
Mm-hmm.
Do we know just kind of like the temperature or the economics of the recycling business anymore? Let's say 10 years ago, when I was photographing these BHS IMRFs all over the country, the recycling business was quite different than what we have now.
Right.
What would you say the recycling business is now?
It's nowhere near where it was 10 years ago. I know that the Recycling Modernization Act is going to create some really positive changes in that it does create more of an extended producer responsibility with those particular items that I mentioned we'd be collecting. And so the MRFs, the traditional material recovery facilities on the recycling side, will have more incentive and more funding to do that. So I do think that that's a positive. I do think there are still very strong markets for certain materials and weak ones for others. And I don't know what my crystal ball says, but, I think we'll be in flux with some of those materials, for the foreseeable future. But I also know that this facility would allow us to get materials from the south that currently pass through us and go all the way up to Portland. This would allow them to have shorter drives, and so we'd have more materials too, so there'd be a larger, and instead of us just being a traditional getting commingle and repackaging it and sending it to Portland, we'd be actually doing that separation here and marketing in Lane County. So there is a positive there.
And so part of this $252,000 that we're asking for would help answer some of those economic questions if it's actually profitable to do that, or is that something totally separate?
Yeah, that'd be separate. That's something that bulk handling systems, that when we did the RFP, it was for waste processing. They gave us a submission that had the waste processing and the recycling line because they said, it makes sense to do both. What we're on the hook for is the waste processing side of it. So what they're going to do is process 3/4 of our waste, and we're going to pay them to do that. The recycling side is separate from our agreement in terms of what we would be on the hook for, if you will. That extra 240,000+ is to get that 30% design for the building. Yeah, so it won't do the analysis.
But that's also in addition of the 195 we authorized about a year ago. So we're in this about 600,000 total? Is that what we're projecting?
I think it's to 450. It's the 240 and the 200, is that right?
Well, initially it was priced at 354,000 according to my notes, and then we approved to add another 195 to that, and now we're asking for another 252. Is that correct?
We're asking for another 252, yes.
So according to my math, that's 597.
Okay.
I just want to make that for the public record that we're spending about $600,000 to find out if this is going to be a profitable venture or not.
Yeah, if those numbers are correct, then yes. Though I don't remember, there was an initial authorization, then there's an additional, and I thought, I think it's close to 500, but it could be I don't want to. I'd have to look at the first two. There was one that was approved, and then we came to the board, the other 192. Yes, it's somewhere close to that, yes.
Okay, sounds good. Just as an offshoot question that someone obviously is an old man who probably sits in his yard and armchair quarterbacks everything. I had this question come to me. And where are we at concerning just the renewable natural gas thing? If we were to say, recycling business may or may not be a game we want to jump into, especially for the money that's going to cost, and the building and the MRF and all the other things. And we already have one of the most highest diversion rates in the country. Lane County does. I mean, we extract a lot of recyclables and things that out of the waste stream already better than anyone else. So I'm just wondering where we're at with the renewable natural gas conversation, if in fact we're doing this for climate control, saying that the greenhouse gases emitter is the biggest one is the dump. So
yeah. One of our biggest drivers for pursuing this processing facility is the fact that mainly what it's doing for us from the waste is pulling organics out, putting the organics in an anaerobic digester, and then that would go to turn into natural gas and be put on the natural gas pipeline. There is talk that in the future, as organizations like possibly LTD come online and say, hey, we'd buy a fleet of buses that could run on that gas, we could save that gas to bring locally, but right now that'd go on the natural gas pipeline. And so we'd be capturing the gas on the front end as opposed to the process that we currently use that takes a lot longer and has more fugitive gas emissions. So that was a big reason in looking at this, was to capture that gas before the byproduct then goes over the landfill.
all right, good. Thank you. Good stuff.
Thank you, Commissioner Lovell. And that did morph into a little bit of the order that we'll be discussing in just a few moments. Further discussion?
On this topic.
Okay, well, a great presentation. We're all pretty highly attuned to what's going on with the both recycling and the Glenwood side. We have a number of people in the audience who are listening about Glenwood. I wish we could blink and it's all done, and then we could have all of that land, that beautiful, beautiful land, in such a wonderful place to put something what we may call a higher use right on that land. But it's not going to happen tomorrow, is it?
I don't think so. I've been blinking a lot, and it hasn't yet.
I dream of Jeannie. No, it wasn't. It was Bewitched, I think. No, Jeannie did the blink and do it. Either way, we don't have such technology. So,
And so did we need to further discuss the item pulled from consent?
Just a couple of items regarding the discussion that we've had already. I just spent a little bit of time in British Columbia, and they do recycling pretty well up there. And I was in a grocery store, and their plastic recycling had, I think it was 16 different places to put your plastic, depending on the size, depending on the clarity of the plastic, et cetera. And, you know, years ago, we had a rule around here. If it looks like a recyclable item, you throw it in the recyclables. And we didn't use any discipline at all. And consequently, the recipient of the recycling product said, you're not just sending as your garbage. As we move into the new era, the new modernization, should we call it, discipline on the user's part is going to be essential to making certain that any recycling effort is successful. And I know that's going to be a large part of the outreach. So. Any further discussion on this particular agenda item, which is 6A? If not, we'll move along, step back to the item that we pulled, which is Order 2308-2206. Vice Chair Trigger.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just editorialize before I make the motion that, of course, the easiest way to have less confusion about what to recycle is to emphasize the reduce part of reduce, reuse, recycle, and not even take part in purchasing, to whatever extent possible, items in the petrochemical-produced plastics. I would move to approve Order 23-08-22-06 in the matter of approving one Public Works amendment and delegating authority to the County Administrator to execute the approved contract for Emerging Acquisitions, LLC, doing business as Bulk Handling Systems, expense in the amount of $252,000.
I'll second.
Moved by Vice Chair Trigger, seconded by Commissioner Buck. I have a couple of questions on that. I was the one that pulled it, and by and large, the questions have been answered already, but I'm going to go back to the questions and make certain that I have a little bit of clarity on it. The first one regarding the language in the order, which is, now that a final location has been determined, there is need for additional topographical and survey work. You covered that a little bit, but people ask me, so the board's already made a decision on where the final location is. And I kind of had to stumble back and say, did we do it? No, we didn't. So you covered it a little bit in response to Commissioner Lovell, but just ever so briefly, can you touch on that regarding the final location?
Yes, so what and it was probably poorly worded, I'll admit that. Essentially what we're saying is that's the final location that we gave to Bulk Handling to say this is the one that we're going to commit to if we build this facility, complete the 30% design plan for us. So there's work that we didn't do on the other properties because we didn't feel comfortable investing in doing all of the groundwork if we weren't going to be there. So by final, we mean that this is the last location we're proposing to them to analyze. They're going to do the complete, and then we make the decision. A, it'll be to move forward or not with the facility, and then B, to also purchase the property. And so we have not purchased the property yet. That's a board decision, but this will give us information needed to enable us to make the right decision on the costing for the recycling facility.
Okay.
Yeah.
That covers that part of it. But either way, let's say the board decides that that's not the location. We have a number, we've approved this contract, and we're adding $252,000 to it today, to someplace around $600,000, whatever the number is. We don't need the exact for this. But that money is not going to be applied to the project. That is just to Bulk Handling Systems to help us understand what the project would entail.
Yes, it's to give us 30% design plans. Yes, so that we know how much it would be to construct and what it would take to, again, prepare that land so we could construct that building or an alternate building.
An alternate building.
So there is some value to us if we don't go through with the waste processing facility because of the soils work. We'll have the soils work done, we'll have a wetland delineation plan created. So whatever we decided, if we decided to purchase that property, we'd be able to use that information.
So we've not just lit our cigar with a $100 bill then. Good. Thank you, Mr. Henry.
Yes. Yeah, I was in your head.
So it's not money down the hole then. It's money that is going to be used for whatever future plans that we have, whether or not this is the actual site. But
yes,
you're pretty confident.
And to tell us, is it $30 million or $35 million to build this thing? That's the key for us, is having, because we have to come up, to your point, we have to come up with that money to create this building, to construct it. And then Bulk Handling System puts their equipment in it and they operate it, and we pay for that through ongoing, payments to them. But in order for them to be able to put their equipment into it, we have to construct that building. So it's important for us to know whether that's going to cost us $27 million or $35 million.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, thank you for that. Then the second question that I had was covered in part by Commissioner Buck in the previous discussion regarding the funding for the ultimate project. Understand, a lot of that is contingent on future grant requests and a lot of different sources that we're hoping for, maybe expecting. But my question is, we had a $15 million ask of the legislature to help us with this, and it didn't go through. So we kind of hung our hat on that and lost that one. What happens if the other grant applications don't go through? What is the contingency? Do we have anything? And really, that's a little bit unfair because that's not what you're here to talk about today. And I don't like springing surprises on you. So if that's something you want to talk about down the road,
Yeah, I think that we'd like to, when we come back next month, is we'll have the firm numbers on what it'll cost to build the building, and then to place equipment in the building and operate it for the lifespan of this contract, and how we would pay for that. We have done a couple contingencies around if we receive $15 million of grant money, if we receive 30, if we receive 0. So we have done a little bit of that analysis, and we'll be able to whittle that in, and also come and say, when we do this much of an increase to the landfill, this is what it means to my payment at the curb. Because it's not a one-to-one. And so we've done some analysis on what it would mean for someone paying at the curb. We'll be able to say what it would mean for somebody bringing in an average load to Glenwood. So that we could look at the real impact on the ratepayers, because the number at the landfill is very different than what it would mean to a ratepayer.
And Mr. Hurley gave me a really good brief on that yesterday, that if tipping fees increase, that's a very small portion of what we as people who throw stuff in the trash and recyclables pay.
Right.
It's a very tiny portion.
About 20% we estimate of your curbside cost is the landfill fee.
Yeah, and we can talk about that more as we get a little bit closer. The last thing I wanted to mention then, so you've covered all of my questions that I have, and I'm ready to move forward with the order. Lane County's current ranking in terms of recycling, we're looking to be, on the cutting edge.
Yes.
We're not on the cutting edge, but is anybody? And how do we rank as far as the other counties or the other authorities? Yeah.
Yeah, so we've been number one for the last 3 or 4 years. We have preliminary numbers, and it looks like our rate went down, that we fell a few percentage points. I don't know where that puts us in the state. Typically, everybody's been doing the same thing. So I would assume that we'll still be in the top 3, if not the top, but those haven't come out for the complete state yet. We've just seen preliminary numbers. I would also add that we are completing right now with DEQ a waste composition study, which hasn't been completed since 2016, to help us learn what's going in the landfill and our transfer stations. And so that's really exciting to see, how that's changed, if it's changed.
So the answer to my question is we've been number one for years.
We've been number one for years.
In recycling here in Lane County.
Yeah, for our diversion, yeah.
I salute you and everybody who makes that happen. And really to the people who are watching and listening, it's not that we are behind on this. We're actually ahead of other jurisdictions. And though things did change a few years ago when China refused to accept any more of our messy recycling, we are still number one. We're still number one, and we want to improve on our ability to. That's all I had for that. I'm ready for the order. We have before us. Can you say the order number again? Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Seneca.
Yeah. So if we're number one, what percentage can we increase from where we're at? I mean, what are we looking at, what we're doing now versus what the IMRF would do?
Yeah, so we were going off the assumption that we were hovering around a 53% recovery rate. So that means that, you're putting 53, let's say easy, 53 tons of diversion. Every time you get 100 tons of waste, 53 of them aren't going to landfill. That's kind of how we look at that, whether that's going to Lane Forest or Rexius or recycling, traditional recycling. We believe that with the IMRF, that will be closer to 70%. So in our industry, what we know is we look for the big things that we can take out, right? So, and that typically equates to heavy as well. So what is one item we could focus on to get out that will put us over the edge? And right now, that's organics. So food waste is about 17% of our waste stream, and other organics are about another 17%. So almost a third of our waste stream going in the landfill are organics of some sort. So that's why we're focusing on those. And then it has the added benefit of helping us with the gas recovery and reducing the emissions in the landfill. So that's the jump. It's 15 to 17 percentage points on our recovery.
And that's currently what goes to Lane County is not included in our 53% or whatever it is.
What goes to Lane County?
Or Lane Forest, excuse me.
Oh, no, it is. It is.
Oh, okay.
Basically, it's everything everything you collect, right? How much of that goes in the landfill? And that was 47%, of everything that we collected in the county. And then, 53% of it was diverted, and that's through recycling, Lane Forest, and those types of things. So when we think of diversion, it's beyond just, it's a recyclable, although one would argue that composting your organics is a recycling too.
Thank you, Commissioner. As far down the road as we feel that we are on this discussion, we're really at the tip of the discussion, and a lot more is going to go into this before we get to where we all want to be regarding recycling. So we have before us then. I'm sorry?
I'm just seeing Commissioner
Chair?
Lovell, but I'm not sure if it's to the order or.
Yeah, our discussion, we're still discussing the order at hand.
This is to order 23-808-2206.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, just maybe a procedural question is, does this order, because it came from the consent calendar, need to be amended in some way so that it's a separate order or not?
No, it does not. It is written as a separate order and was pulled as a complete separate order.
Then and then I think I need to ask a question with Mr. Arlandini one more time, is that when we were talking about the $252,000 extra that is being added to this, and I'm leaning on maybe not supporting this is why I'm asking this question, is, a long time ago in the 1980s, a guy who took over Chrysler and made it what it was, Lee Iacocca, said that, you're at best if you get 70% of your information to make the best decision going forward. Do we have about 70% of our information that we really need to spend this other $252,000 to know if the IMRF is really the way we want to go, based on what Chair Farr said about us being still number one in the recycling business? I mean, is this the right time to continue this?
It's difficult to answer that. I would say the reason why it's important to us is that this is our upfront cost that we have to pay. So, it's $100 million to get this facility off the ground, to get it to open the doors. 70 of that bulk handling is paying for upfront. That's their equipment. 30 million of that is coming from us. That's the estimate. I want to know whether that's 27 million or 40 million, because I think that's what we have to figure out how we get upfront. So that's the. Do we have 70% of the information in terms of the lifespan of the IMRF? Sure, we do. I mean, does $5 or $10 million over the lifespan of this contract, is it a huge portion of it? It's not. It's just for us up front, looking at all those other priorities, $5 to $10 million, that's potentially Cottage Grove.
Right.
Yeah, so that's why it's important to us, but that's why it's hard to answer it.
Well, and my question was a little bit further than that. I mean, if we have 70% of the information, do we know with a 70% surety that this is going to make us money? I mean, because, based on coming off the first budget cycle as being a new commissioner here, and my whole focus going forward is, hey, can we make money on every decision? Because that's where we have to be. We're facing deficits at every turn. You said before, we don't have the money to really do this. So, as I'm looking at this, is another $252,000 a worthy expense for us to bet, we're betting here, that we're going to make money on this? And I don't know. With the recycling business the way it is, I'm not certain.
Thank you, Commissioner Lovell. I'm going to move forward with the order. We have the order before us, moved by Commissioner Trieger and seconded by, I believe it was Commissioner Buck. But before I do that, Mr. Hurley, thank you very much for taking time yesterday to give me more information that helped me move this item forward today, and I appreciate that. Mr. Arlandini, thank you very much. At this point, we have before us order 2308-2206. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Hey.
Passes 3-2 with Commissioner Senega and Commissioner Lovell in opposition.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you.
Good job, Jeff. Thank you.
Then we'll move along with our agenda, which is County Council announcements. Ms. Pettigrew, welcome to Harris Hall.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioner.
You've been here a long time waiting for this discussion to happen, so thank you very much for your
I have been
patience.
listening and taking notes. Thank you. I just want to come here today and congratulate the exceptional work of 2 law clerks that we had this summer. They are wrapping up their final full-time assignments with our office and are moving to part-time status as they are rising 3Ls at the University of Oregon School of Law. Those individuals are Jenna Green and Jordan Clark. They have done exceptional work for our office on a wide range of topics all summer. Under the expert tutelage of Marcus Vehar, they both did a civil commitment hearing this summer and did really good work there. They have been helping Andrea Nagels as we navigate the paid leave Oregon process in an area that is incredibly complex and we have no existing case law. And Jenna Green in particular has done some outstanding legal research in that field. They have assisted me in complex litigation matters, and I think we've given them a broad range of experiences that they can draw from in their future careers and hopefully a future career in public service. So I just want to congratulate them for their work and thank Marcus and Andrea for their outstanding mentorship that they've provided them this summer. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Questions or comments? Is that the extent of your presentation? Thank you very much for being here this morning. Then we'll move down the agenda to County Administration. Mr. Mokrajewski, we have before us Order 2302-2209 in the matter of authorizing a sheriff's sale of surplus county-owned real property on September 28, 2023, and delegating authority to the property management officer to remove any particular property from the sale if determined to be in the county's best interest. And Mr. Mokrajewski, I would be pleased if you would introduce Ms. Hancock.
Thank you, Chair. Kelly Hancock is here, property manager, management officer, to walk you through this item.
Thank you.
Seems like just a few minutes we're talking.
Chair Farrar and Commissioners, I am here for what would normally be on your consent calendar. Historically, an oral auction format has been used to sell surplus county property, and after consideration and research, I'm presenting to you a proposal for a sealed bid auction instead. Research shows us that when an item is difficult for bidders to value, demand is limited, or there's a big gap in perceived value, sealed bid auctions produce better results. I would dare say that our surplus property fits all 3 of that criteria. In addition to that, there's better organization and tracking of bids for a sole facilitator, such as myself. There's no pre-registration of bidders needed. No supplies are needed for a sealed bid auction besides the sealed bid page, which we are offering in the Assessment and Taxation Office and as well online, and we'll mail it out upon request. I'm hoping that we will encourage participation from citizens with mobility or social challenges that have previously declined a live oral auction. And I am using Josephine County as my role model for this. They have seen great results using a sealed bid auction format. Do you have any questions for me?
Questions? I am seeing none. Good presentation. Vice Chair Trieger.
Chair, I move approval of Order 23-08-22-09 in the matter of authorizing a sheriff's sale of surplus county-owned real property on September 28, 2023, and delegating authority to the property management officer to remove any particular property from the sale if determined to be in the county's best interest.
I'll second it.
Moved by Vice Chair Trigger and seconded by Commissioner Lovell, Order 2308-2209. Thank you for the presentation, and we'll see you, I believe, next week.
Yes,
Very good.
Thank you.
I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Ms. Pettigrew. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were signaling for my attention. Very good. Then we'll move down the agenda, Ms. Mokrajewski, to a discussion on the Lane Event Center Master Plan update. And Mr. Mokrajewski, I'll ask you to introduce your panel. We have a number of people who've been waiting patiently for this item, and earlier discussions went on a little bit longer than we'd anticipated, but thank you for your patience. And Mr. Mokrajewski, I'll turn the floor to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure if Dan Hurley's going to join us. He might have just stepped out there. Corey Buller is here, Lane Event Center manager. This is an item that was a board assignment. The board asked for staff to follow up on the Lane Event Center master plan and present an update at a future meeting. We identified today as the date that we would do that, and so we've agendized that item so the public can be aware specifically of that. Mr. Buller has submitted a memo that is linked to the item with the update, and so I think I will turn it over to Mr. Buller just to walk through the update, and then we're here for any questions you may have.
And I'll note, Ms. Mocher, I see Director Hurley is with us today also.
Thank you, Chair, Farr, and Commissioners. Appreciate the opportunity to bring this back to you guys. This has been a fairly long process, and it's not a new discussion in terms of the facility and the opportunities and what we're talking about. So I'm not going to go through the whole memo or anything like that. What I really want to do is just kind of express a few things, and that is, this is the opportunity that we've been talking about and looking forward to for a long time, to get this master plan done, to have an actionable plan to guide us as we move forward. But what we really, especially in the last few years, have come to understand, things change. Just last week, we were an ICP for a fire team. We were a cooling shelter. We were an animal shelter. These things continue to come up, and they're going to continue to come up. And, this board has brought that up several times, and emergency response is something that we always promised we were available for and willing to do. Sorry, my asthma is not enjoying the air quality recently. But we haven't always had the opportunity to show that. But yet we do these days, and foresee that continuing as we move forward. So when we started this process many boards ago, we had, some specific direction to look at things based upon ROI, enterprise fund, things that are going to pay us back and continue to support us as we move forward so that we don't come back asking for money in the future. And while that lens, I think, still applies, there are some other lenses that we do need to apply to it as we look at this. So when we engaged our master plan consultants, that was the starting process. Again, coming back and getting some guidance now as things have changed, as this board has changed. Do you want to look at some different opportunities? Do you want to look at the vision of the facility and the grounds? How far out do we want to look at improving this facility and the grounds and what we're offering to the community and the public? So while we feel very good about the events and the financial situation that we're currently under, that's through the support of this board and previous boards. Coming out of COVID, the business has rebounded exponentially. We're financially stable. We're able to have some capital infrastructure money that we're spending, and we're ready to spend that moving forward, but we need guidance on how you want it spent, what you want to support as we move forward. It's not just about the M Stadium. It's not just about other multi-use facilities. We have an ice rink that needs millions of dollars of renovation, and I think they would like the opportunity to advocate for that. That group's been vocal in the past, and I'm sure they would be again. So we need to come up with a way that we can have these discussions, make these decisions, and then support them as we move forward. So I would be happy to take any questions. I think there's some further discussion, coming up here in the next week or so about the other project in particular. But in terms of the master plan, what we're looking for is just some guidance to start this up again, move it forward, and have some better discussions about where we want to get to in the end.
Thanks, Mr. Buller. Since you took over the operations of the fairground, we've seen exponential growth and interest in the fairgrounds, and the latter being particularly highlighted at this point in time. The very valuable piece of property in a very valuable location with multiple options, and you've been masterful at guiding us through the options. October of 2021 is when this master plan work began. Well, I think the original master plan work began about 2013 when we started looking at the master plan. But things change. It's very, very dynamic, and the demands for the space there have been dynamic, as I mentioned earlier with permanent supportive housing, for instance. So it's important that we do keep our eye on an ever-moving, ever-changing playing field. So I'll look to the board for discussion and comments. And if there are none, I'll continue. Commissioner Buck, followed by Commissioner Lovell.
Thank you, Chair. The memo was really complete, so I really appreciate all the details. There's actually more than one memo in the memo, which was helpful to get the perspective that you were able to provide, and then the consultants that they were able to provide as well, and the limitations of where they can go without continual guidance from our board. They've actually laid out several opportunities for us to move forward with if we so choose. The issue has always been resources, right? We tend to utilize our resources and services to get out the door as much as possible, and a land events center has then languished in upgrades and capital construction and just general maintenance as a result. And that has been to a detriment. There's been a long period of time where we continually fed that site financially in order to keep it stable, knowing that it is a really popular public service, and there's a lot of economic development funding that goes in to making that successful for the community, like the Home and Garden Show and all the conferences that take place on that site. There was some question in the memo specifically around whether we wanted to keep the Lane Event Center at that particular site. And this has come up before, right? It continually comes up, and especially when we were entertaining, and we still haven't made a decision on what we want to do with the M Stadium there. My feel on the community is they, again, like the landfill location, the transit station there in Glenwood. People really like the fairgrounds where it's at. I don't know if we've ever polled the public on that since many years ago when we were talking about moving it out to Bethel, if anything's been there. But my feel is from that initial report back in the day, there are a lot of things that were good about it and it didn't move, specifically because you're near restaurants, you're near activity downtown, you've got hotels near it. And so people generally, I think, really like that location. Given that, if we were to ever make any kind of change with that, I think it would have to have a huge public process involved. I'm inclined not to go that route because I think, as I mentioned, the public likes it there. What to do on that site specifically, like the ice rink renovation, I think that needs to happen. And in the past, if there has been any question about changing the ice rink or removing the ice rink or moving the ice rink, that has been highly contentious. And that is one of the things that I don't think we need to make that particular decision. Other than, yes, it needs to be updated and we need to find resources in order to do that. But as a public space, I highly feel like it's best public use, not private use, because those would be two very different expectations of that particular property. But one of its highest and best public uses is a conference center. I would advocate very highly that we seriously consider what we can do to facilitate upgrades and a hotel for that site in order to accommodate a larger conference center for our community, because we know from our economic development research that our community is passed over for that. Because we don't have a place large enough and we don't have a hotel near it that would accommodate that. That doesn't mean that's the only highest and best use item, but for me, that is a significant economic development driver for that particular location and doesn't impede on whatever we decide to do regarding the stadium, especially from the layout plans that were provided, and I know they're very preliminary. But I would really, really like to see us pursue what it would take to put a larger conference facility and a hotel on that site. I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you, Commissioner. Further discussion, Commissioner Lovall.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, you bring up some good points, Commissioner Buck. I think I'm on the polar opposite end of the spectrum on this one, though. Just from, let's look at a convention center hotel kind of placement in there, highest and best use. I think there's other locations that a convention center would fit in nicely with a lot less investment. It's almost like using that event center is almost like reinventing the wheel. And I think for me, looking at that particular site, it draws a number of questions. First, Corey, thank you for all your help. You've been a wealth of information. I've called you several times, and I appreciate what you've given. The mission of the Lane Event Center, I think we need to re-look at that, is to enrich the lives of Lane County residents by providing programs that support family, youth, and community values. So that's what Commissioner Buck is also describing as an epicenter for the community, which I wholly agree with. Now, the other thing that's in the dialogue of which you supplied us with is that the topic of moving the Lane Event Center has occurred over the last number of decades. 30 years we've been talking about this, ever since I was a kid. Well, I wasn't really a kid 30 years ago, but we've been talking about it a long time. And we've always talked about deferred maintenance. And, you know, just from my experience as a developer and someone who takes old buildings and massages them into repurpose, well, I know the amount of expense and cost and limitation and time that it takes to take something that is old, that is almost basically at the end of its useful life, and to make it useful again. Sometimes we have to look at something and say, is there a bigger opportunity here to maybe move it, sell this property, partner with the city of Eugene for a grander vision for the community of Eugene, Springfield, Lane County, and maybe pull our county resources into another site? A couple of the questions I still have, though, is the market demand still strong in our culture for a fairgrounds or a fair type situation where we have kids that come and do 4-H and all those other kinds of rural things? I think it is. And it's kind of hard to quantify that now that we live in a techno society where we kind of forget where, you know, our apples and oranges come from. So I think that's still a good demand for the initial mission statement to bring people together. 2017, we're talking about this master plan. We live in a very different world than we live in 2017, some 7 years later. And I think that's something we need to take in consideration when looking at this. Commissioner Buck mentioned that the ice arena folks were very opinionated. We're talking about mainly hockey guys and gals. They're opinionated folks. And, you know, you look at what happened in Idaho Falls. Idaho Falls took a gamble and built an ice arena and housed basically a minor league hockey team. And they attract 4,500 people a night. Mr. Mokrahysky, you could show off your best slap shot there. That would be a good place for you to do that. So, you know, I'm all in support of doing those kinds of activities too, but I think what it really brings me back to what Mr. Williams said during the public testimony that resonates with me talking about this is, what's the larger vision? What's the larger vision for this property? Is there a larger vision that we haven't considered? That maybe this is 55 acres that could have well over 1,000 houses and services and park spaces and mixed use kinds of things. And then the fairgrounds could be at a totally other site. Now, obviously, I'm doing pie in the sky dreaming here, because that's going to be a huge price tag. But we have to look at what the larger vision is here. What's the legacy that we, as the people who are living now, are going to lay down for 2 generations down the road for this community? I think, yes, we need a convention center. I think, yes, we need more hotel space. Yes, we need ice rinks. Yes, we need place. Yes, you need a new office, Mr. Brewer, because you can't even rip the carpet up. You have asbestos problems there. We have a lot of problems at that site. And to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense to keep pouring money into it when, you know, as a community, we could get together and place a grander vision put forth. So basically, my last question is, where does the board feel we need to go with this topic? My mind, I think we need to really expand our mind and think about moving it and doing something different with that site. And that's what I have to say. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Lovall, for the discussion. You know, while I wait for hands raised on that, I was in Vancouver, BC. Familiar with Rogers Arena in Vancouver, BC? It's where the Canucks play, an ice arena. And you know who was playing on the ice arena when I was there? It wasn't the Canucks, it was Rod Stewart. So ice arenas, we don't use it very much for the things that an ice arena can be. And I look at the bubble graph that we have here, and the ice arena is, if the top right-hand corner is the highest best use, I'm presuming the bottom left-hand corner is the lowest worst use. Ice arena is firmly entrenched in the lowest worst use. So this is all a part of the discussion. I'm not casting any dispersions on that. But Rod Stewart didn't look very cold as he was singing out there, I got to tell you. He looked really quite the opposite. So, that being said, the discussion of this massive property, when commissioners when I first came on board, I looked at it and what can we do best with it. Every time we have commissioners come on board, what is the best use for it? I think Commissioner Buck, you and I talked when you came on board about this huge chunk of land downtown and how few vacant front doors we have in Lane County, and how could we convert that to front doors, which we need more than anything else. Well, it's all a part of the big discussion, and it really is a part of the master plan that you're working on. And I really am thoroughly in support of moving forward with the master plan that really does look at all these things we want to juggle and what is the highest and best. This bubble graph, I don't think that says it all. If you slide down to page 12, which is more of a spreadsheet on those same items, it gives you more detailed information. I encourage anybody watching to look at that. And I think, I'm not sure who prepared this, and Mr. Cheney, you're with us in the room. I'm sure you had something to do with the preparation of today's agenda item.
That memo actually came from the consultants, and again, that was looking through the lens of ROI. So when we started that is looking at which ones are giving us the best opportunity to put dollars into our pocket so that we can be self-sustaining. That's why, like the ice arena is at the low end there. From that lens, it does not provide us much money. In fact, we used to lose a lot of money in there. We're just trying to break even now, but it provides a community benefit and opportunities. That is a completely different lens, and many other projects do as well.
But I got to tell you, put Rod Stewart on that, I'll bring a few dollars in. That's pie in the sky also. Any further discussion? Vice Chair Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. I think, we were just asking for an update on the process, and this memo more than does that. It's great to have so much information. We have, I believe next week on our agenda, a fairly high-profile project that involves this campus, and I think we need to kind of close the loop or see at least what happens next week, because my concern is, regardless of what happens with the stadium project, the right next thing to do is to sort of zoom out and get more community input. But there's been such high profile about one specific proposed project, or maybe two, depending who you're talking to, that could be perceived as the community voting on whether to do either, both, neither of these projects, and not a true visioning of here are community needs, here's the history of the property, here's the current use, which is increasing in terms of event days and attendance, and really bring people into that process of what, given where we are now, at this point in our time as a community, history, the needs, and what that property already has, and what the specific resources are available to us to use for certain kinds of uses for that property. I worry that we're not in a good place as a community to have those conversations, to have a sort of blank slate enough of a conversation, that we need to make some other larger decisions or give directions and then leave things a little bit of time and breathing space before we go out to that kind of broader community conversation, which for me is the right next step before we do any really focused planning for that campus.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Further discussion? Well, this is discussion only, and we had it. Oh, Mr. Mokrowski.
Well, thank you. Sorry, Chair. I just was going to offer that, there's been, I think, some good comments from commissioners here, and what the work that we've done to date on the master plan really is reflective of looking at the campus as it historically has operated, as a general events, a host of general events. The question that I think several of you are posing is a really sort of a 30,000-foot, much broader view. Should we know that it's an underutilized campus. We know that the facilities are in desperate need of repair. We know there's great opportunity that exists there. Is this the right site? If so, what is the proper use and most desired use as a general event center with enhanced convention space and hotel, as a sports destination and complex with an ice rink and a ball field and indoor facilities and those kind of things. So those are not questions that really were posed to the consultant that did the events. That's why you see kind of the ranking. The ranking is based on, well, this is a general event center. So based on that, here's where the highest and best use is going to be. So that's why, yes, we spent a lot of time on some particular projects that have had timelines, and we need to get those questions answered. We will have a discussion next week with the board about one of those projects. And I think what we've experienced in the master plan work to date is we really need the board as the policy body to provide some broader direction on what you believe, as a reflection of the community, the priority should be for the use of this campus. And then we can start looking at, okay, how do we, what type of investments do we need to make there? So hopefully that's helpful, and I think it's good as we sort of start to resolve maybe some of the questions about immediate needs, and then we reflect back on this broader process that we engage the community in some of those discussions.
Thank you for that, Steve. Mr. Mokrat, Steve and Corey, the work that's happened over the last few years, since you both kind of came on board at about the same time, you as the director, just a little bit before Steve came on as the administrator, being able to use the existing facilities in innovative new ways, using the pavilion for smoke respite, for instance, and for other respite, and during COVID, the uses of the fairgrounds. Having that facility is just so key to Lane County's mission. It really indeed is. And I think we've done a masterful job without a master plan, but we can't continue that mastery without such. So I'm excited about the next steps. I'm excited about where we go forward with this. Great discussion today. We will talk more about it in the not too distant future. Thank you all for being here for the discussion. With that, we will move along on our agenda.
Thank you.
Any announcements, Mr. Mokahysky?
I have two, Chair. The first is a fire update. I'd like to, if we have a couple minutes, I'd like to give an update on the various fires. I will say Commissioner Senega last week sent me an email requesting a few items be covered as part of this, so I'm going to attempt to address those questions. If I don't do adequate justice, then you can ask for more information. We'll start with the good news. The salmon fire east of Oak Ridge is no longer considered a danger to residents. All evacuation levels have been lifted, and the Forest Service forest closure around the fire has been canceled. So that's good news. We still have 2 active fires in East Lane County. First, the Bedrock Fire is approximately 30,554 acres. It's at 35% contained. The principal agencies, and this is to one of Commissioner Senega's questions, principal agencies responding, U.S. Forest Service, Bureau of Land Management, and I'll send this in email to you so you have it. You don't have to take all this, but I just wanted to provide it here. Forest Service, Bureau of Land Management, Oregon Department of Forestry, Oregon State Fire Marshal's Office. 760 total personnel have worked the fire, 14 crews, 11 helicopters, 50 engines, 15 dozers, 31 water tenders. The evacuation status, there is some good news on both of the active fires. Yesterday, the Sheriff's Office was able to reduce the level 3, which is go now. So level 1 is be ready, level 2 is be set, level 3 is go now. Sheriff's Office was able to reduce the level 3 evacuation area to a level 2, which is be set. That area is from Peninsula Road east of Timber Creek and Big Fall Creek Road east of the intersection with Peninsula Road. Although conditions have changed enough to allow people to return to their homes today, that could change as fire season continues. Residents who choose to return home to the downgraded area should continue to be prepared, including considering the following steps, and this is true really for everyone in our community and certainly in the affected areas. Emergency alerts, you can register to receive emergency alerts at www.lanealerts.org. Keep your mobile devices charged and powered on. Be sure that they're not set to silent mode, and keep them nearby so you can hear any alerts, especially at night. Stay packed. We should all still have a go bag ready with essential items that you can just grab, in your office, at your home, in your car. You can grab and go if you need to. You can learn more about that. I'll send the link here. It's a complicated link. So we have that available on our site. Animals, if you have large animals or livestock, you can still contact Lane County Animal Services to make arrangements for sheltering. The phone number for Lane County Animal Services is 541-285-8227. The other level 2B set areas remain in place. The Lookout Fire, so that was Bedrock. Lookout Fire is approximately 12,188 acres. Containment is 5%. The principal agencies responding are the U.S. Forest Service, BLM, Oregon Department of Forestry, Oregon State Fire Marshal's Office, and the California Office of Emergency Services. Approximately 1,130 total personnel, 73 engines, 21 crews, 13 bulldozers, 28 water tenders, 11 not sure what that is, 7 helicopters. Evacuation status yesterday, the sheriff's office was able to reduce a portion of the level 3 go now evacuation area to level 2. That area is north of Highway 126 between Blue River Reservoir Road and the half-mile marker on Mill Creek Road, as well as the area south of Highway 126 between the highway and the river, from the east end of Mackenzie River Drive to the Mackenzie River Bridge east of Taylor Road. Crystal clear, right? No. So the area descriptions are complicated, and we use an interactive map that allows people to search their address and see the evacuation area in detail, because my description doesn't do justice to the folks that are affected. That helps to reduce confusion related to any written or verbal description. So there's currently, and let me see, you can find that at www.lanecountyor.gov/fires. You can find the interactive, the fire evacuation pages, Facebook links, evacuation information, maps, and all of that is lanecountyor.gov/fires. There is currently a Red Cross shelter available in Lowell to serve both fires. This morning, there were 5 people sheltering with an additional 6 in RVs at the shelter location. Lane County Animal Services is not currently housing any evacuated livestock, but is ready to reopen the large animal shelter if needed. Smoke outlook, I'm just going to touch on smoke outlook and estimated carbon emissions, which were questions Commissioner Senega had. And I'll also just note that on days like this, when the air quality in the metro area is really good, and we have blue skies and the temperatures are reasonable, sort of average for the period of time, it's easy to think that, okay, we're much better than we were last week when we had, 105-degree temps and 300+ AQI. The reality is these fires still are burning. They still are a threat. We've avoided loss of residential structures, and the crews and everyone are doing great work, but let's not be tricked into thinking that we're out of fire. We are in the midst of fire season for several more weeks. So we will continue to monitor and respond to the work as needed and keep the board updated. On smoke, the smoke outlook, smoke has reduced the air quality for most residents in Lane County over the past few weeks. There is an air quality advisory for Deschutes, Eastern Lane County, and Klamath counties in effect through this afternoon. The Bedrock and Lookout fires continue to impact air quality, and favorable weather has provided some clearing across the forecast area until you get to East Lane County and east of there. Smoke from Northwest California may begin to move into the area tomorrow. Smoke that settled in around the Bedrock fire yesterday improved overnight into this morning. Air quality is predicted to be good in Eugene and Springfield. Mackenzie and Oak Ridge will have fluctuations in air quality throughout the day from good to unhealthy. And importantly, residents can find detailed AQI updates daily at fire.airnow.gov. Winds shift, fire activity changes, and so it's really important just to track the AQI information. Again, fire.airnow.gov. Finally, estimated carbon emissions. The question was asked about the impact from these fires. County staff has looked into and researched the research that's available on estimated carbon emissions associated with large-scale wildfire events in the Pacific Northwest. Total carbon emissions from a wildfire depend upon fire severity, the fuel involved, the moisture content of those fuels, and other factors. So we can't yet calculate the emissions from our local fires occurring in 2023, but we can expect to be able to find more on this in the future. The European Union's Copernicus Atmosphere Monitoring Service, CAMS is the acronym, uses satellite observations to monitor global emissions of carbon dioxide and methane during the 2021 wildfire season. A total of 83 million metric tons of carbon were released from fires across British Columbia, Washington, Oregon, and California. That was for the 2021 fires. Using an Environmental Protection Agency calculator, this would have been equivalent to the carbon emitted by just over 200 natural gas power plants operating for 1 year. So it's a good question, and it's important for us to track all of these things. And as we get through this year's fire activity, we can continue to work with our local, state, and federal partners to gather that information provided to the board. That was a lot. If I can answer questions, happy to do so, and then I just have one other piece of good news to share with you.
That was a lot, Ms. Mulgrew. You know, somebody this morning said that that Lane County's website is a morass. I'll tell you what, based on emergency, it's very easy and very interactive to look at your very specific location and see from your own computer or your telephone what is happening locally. And I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at the Bedrock fire, and then I can pop straight back and look at the other information that's on the website. Right at the very masthead of the website, you pop on the emergency information. So well done on that.
It's really good for emergencies. We'll have the yellow banner that up the top, and you link there. It's true, there's a lot of information on our website, just so depending on the information you're looking for, it can be easy or more difficult to find.
But all I want to know about is me, and from there, I can find out about me. And that refers to all 370,000 people in Lane County. So, thank you. Any questions or comments from Ms. Mokraski? Any further announcements?
So I will email you all that information, because I know it was a lot, but I think it's valuable information just generally to provide. And also wanted the board and the public watching to be aware that, while we, sort of the daily activity and emails and phone calls and everything related to the fires may not be surfacing to everyone's level, depending on their involvement in this work. There are a lot of both first responders and crews working the fires, as well as staff that are actively engaged. So the one other piece of information I want to share with you, and you have an email from Mr. Kyler in your inbox. I had an opportunity yesterday to tour and go out with the pavement crew. It was a really nice day yesterday to be out on the pavement crew, and I spent some time with Orrin Schumacher, our roads maintenance supervisor, and he informed me, and you have this in your inbox, that we were successful, our Public Works Department was successful in securing a $2.35 million grant for the Shaw Creek Crossing Culvert Replacement Project, including a new fish passage at Shaw Creek, a tributary to the main stem of the Siuslaw River. This project will open up almost 5 miles of salmonoid spawning habitat. So want to just recognize the great work of our Public Works team, and particularly our Engineering, Construction Services, and Road Maintenance Division. Melanie O'Hara, Sasha Vartanian, Cassidy Mills, and Moria Papagallo did great work. There were federal funds that were made available through the U.S. Department of Transportation, and we went through this aquatic organism passage program and secured that $2.35 million. So really excited about that project. That's it.
Right on. That's all good news. Any questions, comments? Then going down our agenda, we have no call for executive session this morning. We will have an executive session as the last item on today's agenda this afternoon. And then with that, we have no other business for this morning's agenda. Then we will be recessed until 1:30 at the sound of my gavel.